Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining our 2024 Application Assistance Workshop webinar for CDFA's Dairy and Livestock Manure Methane Reduction Programs. My name is Alyssa Louie. I'm the Senior Environmental Scientist for the Alternative Manure Management Program. And I'm joined by several of my colleagues, also with CDFA's Office of Environmental Farming and Innovation, and I'll let them introduce themselves. How about you, Rosie, first, and then Roberta?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rosie Gill, and I'm a Senior Environment Scientist for Dairy Digester Research and Development Program, which is also known as DDRDP, and I'm going to pass it to Roberta.
Sorry, just helping with technical issues here. Hi, I'm Roberta Franco. I'm the supervisor for the methane teams, which includes the 3 programs here you're going to hear about today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And we will have another colleague joining us just in a little bit, so we'll have him come on later. So for our attendees, just a few quick housekeeping and participation notes for Zoom. You should see a chat, raise hand, and Q&A button available at the bottom of your Zoom screen in the control bar. During the presentation, attendees will be muted, but you can feel free to use the chat or the Q&A feature, and we strongly encourage using the Q&A function for questions, as it'll help us track and respond to them. And during the times in the webinar open for questions, if you'd like to ask your question verbally, please use the raise hand function, and we'll allow you to unmute yourself, which should show up as a prompt, as you can see here. So a little bit on the format of today's meeting. This workshop is being held as a joint program webinar, as all 3 of these programs are quite closely related and their solicitations are being run on the same timeline. Each program will have about 55 minutes, and we'll be doing our best to hold to the scheduled agenda listed here as closely as possible, so that if you're only here or interested in 1 or 2 of the programs, you can join or focus in accordingly. The link for the agenda is also going into the chat. We also do have a second workshop next week, which will cover the same information. And the registration links and agendas for both workshop webinars are available on our program web pages. So let me put those in here. And we plan to have space for general questions about the application process and program requirements within the time allotted for each program. If there does happen to be extra time at the very end of the webinar or between sections, we can open things back up to questions from previous sections as well. However, in the interest of time and wanting to make sure that information benefits the whole audience as much as possible, we do request that any rather complex or unique or situational questions be emailed to us instead. If it's appropriate to respond to them, we will include it in the Q&A postings that'll be accessible on the program web pages later. And emails into the chat. And then the last couple points. Understanding there is a lot of information to go through, we do plan to share slides and a link to the recording afterwards. Also, we will be turning off our cameras for the presentation portions just to help save bandwidth and to keep the recording cleaner for posting. So with that, we'll get started with the 2024 Alternative Manure Management Program. The main purpose of today's webinar is providing information about the Alternative Manure Management Program, the current grant cycle, main program requirements, and the application process and contents. Much of what this presentation covers follows the flow and detailed information contained in the request for grant applications, which is the primary reference and framework document that will be important for all interested applicants to read. In addition, we'll go over and have a short demonstration of the benefits calculator tool, which estimates GHG reductions for projects, and we'll describe other tools and resources available to help applicants as well. So the Alternative Manure Management Program, which I'll refer to as AMMP or AMP for short, is a competitive grant program administered by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. Its purpose is to provide financial assistance to California dairy and livestock operators for the implementation of non-digester manure management practices that result in long-term methane emissions reductions and maximize environmental co-benefits. Since 2017, the program has completed 6 grant rounds, funding a total of 168 incentive and 2 demonstration projects. Collectively, these projects represent about $106 million in funding and are estimated to reduce 1.44 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents over their expected 5-year lifespan. To date, about 70% of those funded projects are completed and operational. So not only do these projects contribute to the state's greenhouse gas reduction targets, they can also provide pathways for dairy and livestock operations to reduce environmental impacts, improve efficiency of manure and nutrient handling, and address challenges or yield products like compost that can make them more sustainable and resilient in the long run. So you can see here a bit of the breakdown of those incentive and demonstration projects as awarded over each grant round and geographically across the state. As you're aware, a lot of the projects are concentrated in the Central Valley where most of the industry is, but we've awarded projects and received applications from the northern and southern parts of the state as well, and hope to continue getting successful participation from a wide range of regions. There are no geographic limitations for the AMP program as long as the project is on a commercial dairy or livestock operation in California. So now to focus on the current, our 7th grant round, the 2024 AMP. Funding for this round comes from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which the state allocates to various California climate investments. The sources and amounts did get a little complicated, but you're welcome to read more detail and explanation in the Request for Grant Applications introduction. The main number of interest here is that there is $17.4 million available for 2024 AMP awards. And we are expecting to be able to add 3.5 million more to this for a grand total of about 20.9 million. That's actually the same as the 2013 grant round and the amount we originally intended. But that will be contingent on and not available until next year's state budget. The maximum amount per AMP grant is $750,000 per project, with matching funds encouraged but not required. Starting in 2023, we increased the duration of the grant terms to 30 months instead of 2 years to try and better account for the magnitude of these projects and reduce the potential need for extensions as well. The current program timeline is shown in the table here, but please keep in mind dates are subject to change. The application period has been open for about 2 weeks now, and an important date to note is the deadline for grant applications, Friday, October 18th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. The application period will be followed by review, and award announcement is expected in the first quarter of 2025. And then the current start date that's being targeted for awarded projects to begin their implementation is June of 2025. Here's a visual overview of the solicitation and review process that helps give the timeline some additional context. We're in the early stage of the application period, as mentioned, which is longer this year and just under 90 days. Submitting a strong proposal means having a good plan, some details in place, maybe even getting a head start on the permitting process. So these are all things that can take a while. That's why we recommend to start as early as possible. After the application period, submitted applications undergo an administrative review to check that main eligibility criteria have been met and for any major issues like missing required information. And disqualifications may occur at this stage if necessary. Then applications undergo a financial review, which is done to help assess the financial soundness of an organization to successfully complete and sustain a project, especially as grant funding is on a reimbursement basis. And they also go through a technical review to evaluate things like feasibility of project plans and level of greenhouse gas emissions reductions. Once the projects have their full score, a final funding recommendation is made. So applicants not selected for funding are notified with summarized review feedback on their application provided within 90 days. Applicants selected for an award are also notified and will begin going through the processes to establish a grant agreement. That includes getting set up with a supplier ID with the state to be able to receive reimbursements and a pre-project consultation. And these grant agreement processes can take 3 to 4 months. So each time our programs receive funding and we prepare to open a new solicitation, we do our best to review and improve our requests for grant applications and associated application and program elements, often taking into account feedback we've received or challenges encountered from applicants and our technical reviewers. So I'd like to briefly summarize changes to the program since the last grant round in 2023, before we get into the review of key program guidelines. The two main ones are built into more of the review and awards side of things. So this year, the program has included a $1 million set aside for eligible projects that are proposing pasture-based management as their primary practice type. So although pasture-based management has been an eligible practice since AMMP's inception, and we've awarded some projects that contain secondary or even tertiary elements of pasture-based management, we have yet to represent this option in a more meaningful way. There are some reasons for that. It's a practice that may not be doable in some parts of the state. The GHG reductions tend not to be as competitive, but we're trying to see about getting it more opportunity. The second here is that applicants or applicant organizations that have not been awarded AMP funding in the past will be eligible to get some additional points. AMP allows applicants to submit and be awarded for more than one project in the same or across different grant rounds, as long as they're for a unique dairy or livestock operation. The GHG reductions and our awards are based on operation, not person or tax ID. However, as time has gone on and our awardee pool has grown, the program is incorporating methods to better support the equitable distribution of funds across the state and encourage the adoption of alternative manure management practices by new eligible applicants. This is a move similar to those already taken by many of our office's other climate smart ag incentive programs. For some of the other revisions in the request for grant applications, in the notification and feedback section, the time when applicants not selected for an award will receive feedback regarding their application was increased from 60 to 90 days. And in the CEQA and permit section, the time when grant recipients are expected to comply with applicable permitting was increased from 6 to 18 months within grant agreement execution, just given how lengthy permitting processes can be, and because our grant terms have increased to 30 months. Some of the more minor changes included some updates to the benefits calculator tool, but these were on the back end calculations and data with no new additions or changes to the user inputs or interface that you would see. And in the online application itself, there are some additional applicant questions to better define the operation and the people applying, as well as a new preferred file naming approach for attachments, just to help make things easier for applicants as well as our technical reviewers. And then just some reminders and a brief note at the bottom here on related opportunities for prospective AMP applicants or previous AMP recipients. Dairy Plus is available again for its second round. Eligible applicants for that now include those who still have an in-progress AMP project, in addition to those with past already completed projects. And new as of last year, past AMP recipients can apply for DDRDP funds if they want to further advance their manure management. More on those opportunities will be covered in the DDRDP and Dairy Plus presentations. So next we'll be reviewing the main eligibility criteria, manure management practices covered by AMP, and exclusions, as these are all initial important information to consider for anyone interested in applying. California farmers, ranchers, and California Native American tribes are eligible to apply. Technical assistance providers or other organizations can help develop an application and submit it on behalf of a dairy or livestock operation. But if awarded, CDFA will go into contract directly with the dairy or livestock operation. The project site must be located on a commercial California dairy or livestock operation. And the current baseline manure management practices on that operation must include the anaerobic decomposition of volatile solids stored in a pond, lagoon, or other predominantly liquid anaerobic environment. In other words, conditions that lead to methane production must currently exist at that site for reductions to then be achieved and quantified through an implemented AMP project. A group of dairy or livestock operations can propose to develop a centralized or cluster project, for example, a centralized composting facility or a shared separator. But there are some conditions and considerations around this in the request for grant applications. So an applicant might own more than one dairy or livestock operation. As mentioned briefly, they can submit more than one application as long as each proposal represents a separate, unique dairy or livestock operation. In terms of the new applicant point system we discussed, in the event a new applicant or applicant organization submits more than one proposal in the same grant round, those new points would only be applied to one of the applications. If an operation already happens to have a dairy digester that hasn't been funded by CDFA's dairy digester program, they can apply to AMP to reduce manure emissions from methane not being treated in that digester system. And last here, projects must include at least one eligible practice supported by the AMP that reduces baseline methane emissions. And we'll go over what those practices are next. The eligible practices under the AMP are those for which there are methods to quantify GHG emissions reduction and that are supported by the quantification methodology and associated benefits calculator tool developed by the California Air Resources Board. These practices are expected to reduce methane emissions on a dairy or livestock facility if implemented, generally by reducing the amount of manure that makes it into a wet or anaerobic environment like a lagoon. So these practices are binned into 4 categories, as you see here. The first is pasture-based management, which can include the conversion of a non-pasture dairy or livestock operation to pasture-based management, or increasing the amount of time livestock spend at pasture at an existing pasture operation. In this practice, livestock deposit more manure directly on pasture instead of on concrete or in housing where their manure would get scraped or flushed into an anaerobic storage. Second is alternative manure treatment and storage, including implementing changes in housing to compost-bedded pack barns or slatted floor pit storage, cleaned out at least monthly. AMP has only had compost-bedded pack barn projects thus far, and in these housing systems, cows have a larger bedded loafing area where more of their manure is deposited and intensively managed to aerate and compost it. And they spend less time on concrete feed or standing lanes compared to, say, a typical flushed freestall design. There are resources on design and management of these barns linked in the request for grant applications that I would highly recommend folks check out if they're interested in this practice. So third is solid separation of manure solids prior to their entry into a wet or anaerobic environment. There are certain separation technologies available listed here, such as screen or screw press separator. And they have to be implemented in conjunction with one of the manure treatment or drying practices listed for the separated solids that you see on the far right, such as open solar drying or composting. For this type of project, either the installation of a new solid separation system on an operation that does not currently employ one, or the installation of a new solid separation system with significantly higher separation efficiency than the existing one used may be eligible. And just a couple notes about the advanced solid liquid separation and vermifiltration. These can be considered kind of like secondary separation systems that take the liquid, fraction, or effluent from a primary separator and then remove additional fine or suspended manure solids. As these systems typically need a coarse solids removal in place as well, they must be implemented in conjunction with a primary mechanical separator. That primary mechanical separator can be new or existing, but it will be up to the applicant to evaluate during project planning whether an existing separator can adequately address the short and long-term needs of that secondary separation system, and to describe it well enough in their application that it can be assessed by our technical review. The fourth eligible practice type is conversion from a flush to a scrape manure collection system, whether chain scrapers, vacuum tankers, or manure collecting robots. Proposals can be for full or partial scraper vacuum conversion. And those collected solids must similarly undergo a treatment or storage processes listed on the right. The expectation is that the collected solids do not enter a liquid storage system anymore. So on the flip side of eligibility, we have some things that AMP funds cannot be used for, including projects that propose practices that'll in fact increase baseline GHG emissions, for example, changing from a dry scrape to a flushed lagoon system, the repair of existing defunct or non-functioning equipment, to duplicate equipment or activities that will receive funding from a different state or federal funding source, so no double dipping on the same equipment or installations, to treat digestate, which is the digested manure material resulting from an anaerobic digestion process. And that's for those operations that might already have a non-DDRDP funded digester on site. AMP funds cannot be used on operations that have already installed a CDFA DDRDP funded anaerobic digester system, or on operations that previously received AMP funding and successfully completed a project. So it's one AMP funded project per unique dairy or livestock operation site still. Previous AMP recipients who might have an expired or failed project may not reapply for 3 years after the time the project was closed out. So there are some other program requirements and limitations described in the RGA to be aware of, including expectations around permitting compliance, what counts as allowable and unallowable project costs, the requirement for post-project annual reporting, and expectations around selected equipment and technologies, namely that they should be commercially available, so not in a pilot or research phase, and that nutrient management technology can be included in a project if it's in addition to an AMP-eligible manure methane reduction practice, so not a standalone for an AMP project. As I won't be going into these in detail, this is another reminder that we strongly encourage reviewing the request for grant applications carefully before preparing your application. All right, so moving on to how to apply. Applicants will be required to complete and submit their applications online, and a link to the 2024 AMP application is on our webpage. You will be prompted to register for an account or log into an existing account to apply. This was the same application platform we used last year in 2023, so for those who might have already made an account, you can just log back into that one. And next, I'll go over what makes up an application, and we'll do a demonstration navigating this portal later. So the online application consists of two main parts to complete. The first is project information, which is a short, basic information form that is built into every AMP Fund application. It contains fields for application name, award amount requested, and the primary contact information. The second is application forms, where you'll find the primary program application. The AMP application starts with some general applicant and project location information and is then followed by 5 sections about the project to complete. In each of those sections, there may be some questions to answer or fill in within the application itself, as well as places to upload attachments. And there are both required and optional attachments, and some of those have templates provided. When there is a template provided, it must be used for these applications. And links to those templates can be found in the request for grant applications, on our AMP website, and in the online application form itself. So a really great reference for being able to review the application sections, learn more about what each section is about and what attachments are needed before even having to go into the online application is the 2024 RGA. So there's a grant application sections and attachments part in there, as well as a link to a preview of the AMP application questions. The first of those 5 main application sections is project plan and long-term viability. It contains a few questions about the practice being proposed and the anticipated start and end date for the project. And the attachments in this section include attachment 1, the project narrative, which is a comprehensive description of the proposed project, including background of the dairy or livestock operation, its current manure management practices, the proposed manure management practices, and how they will be achieved, the project team, operations and maintenance considerations, etc. There are instructions and prompts for what should be addressed in the project narrative, which can be found at the end of the template and posted separately on the webpage as a PDF. To support the narrative, there are some if applicable attachments. So although not required, the first, attachment 1.1, which is used to include site maps and project design documents, is strongly encouraged. Visuals are really helpful for understanding the setup of the operation, what's being proposed, and how well design components have been thought through. Attachment 1.2 is used if the facility or land is owned by one individual but is being used or leased by another. The applicant can get a letter of agreement and support for the project from the other party. And 1.3 is a new option included in response to an applicant question and potential scenario. It probably won't apply to many, but if a cluster or centralized type project is being proposed, say one dairy is just moving their manure wastewater to another dairy to go through a shared separation system, this just allows a space for more than one participating operation to document their acknowledgement, agreement, or commitment to the project. And attachment 2, the work plan, is also attached in this section. This is just a table listing out the tasks or activities required to accomplish objectives identified in the project narrative, who's responsible to do them, and the anticipated dates for the implementation of each. So here we'll see a quick visual of the project narrative template and associated instructions, and the work plan template. So the second section is budget and financials. Questions in the application include grant amount requested for the project, matching funds provided, if any, and a breakdown of expense type in the budget using defined category options. So for example, 50% of my project's budget is for the procurement of solid separation equipment, and about 50% is for the installation of that separator and general facility improvements needed for the project, like a concrete drying slab. Attachments in this section include attachment 3, the budget worksheet, which is a categorized spreadsheet for the accounting of costs, work hours, and equipment associated with activities necessary to complete the project. Attachment 3.1 is a place for bids, quotes, or estimates to support what is showing up in that budget worksheet. While it's not a required attachment, in some cases we're aware it can be challenging to get estimates in a timely manner, it is strongly encouraged. And attachment 4, financials. There's no template for this one. Applicants can choose what documents to include as a PDF. These are here to help demonstrate the organization's financial strength and whether a project is likely to be successfully completed, as well as sustained past the grant term, and if costs can be tolerated while waiting for reimbursement. Documents might include a CPA auditor's report, tax returns, and financing letters for the project, such as from a banking institution. Our CDFA Audits Office is the only one conducting this portion of review, and the information is kept confidential. So before moving out of this section, I did want to talk briefly about budgets and project cost planning. Especially since the pandemic, costs have gone through some dramatic fluctuations, and project costs are more likely to go up than to come under what was estimated, although that does happen sometimes too. When developing a project budget, we've included a note in the RGA to keep in mind that there could be 6 to 12 months between proposal and the start of project implementation if a project is awarded. So this is really just here to try and get folks to pause and think, be cautious about overly ambitious project scopes, be realistic about how much matching funds could be tolerated, especially if that amount ends up being increased. Or perhaps make sure vendors or contractors are aware of that grant program timeline so that they can better project and estimate out. The program is not supportive of any unjustified padding of budgets either, and part of the application review does include whether the budget appears reasonable, comprehensive, and supported by bids or quotes, but it's just recommending a thoughtful approach wherever possible to minimize financial concerns later. So here's a bit of a visual on that budget worksheet spreadsheet where you can describe allowable costs for the project by category: supplies, equipment, labor, other, and cost share. The third section is estimated GHG emissions reduction and environmental benefits. So questions in the application are going to request livestock types and number included in the project boundary, as well as GHG reduction and co-benefit summary data. These are essentially pulled directly from and should match the project's final completed benefits calculator tool. So attachments in this section include attachment 5, the benefits calculator tool, which estimates GHG reductions and co-benefits for the project. Please make sure to use the latest version available. Attachment 5.1 is optional, but another one that is strongly encouraged. This is the explanation of assumptions for GHG calculations, which can include information to explain or support the values that you've entered in the calculator tool, such as for milk production and characteristics, or estimates on electricity and diesel use associated with manure management activities. Attachment 6 is on environmental co-benefits, which is where you can discuss environmental co-benefits past GHG reductions or those limited values that are quantified in the benefits calculator tool. So things like nutrient management, composting, other air, water, or soil benefits. Maybe the project will help reduce commercial fertilizer purchase and use, or help with water conservation, or meeting the farm's nitrogen limits. So here's a visual of where you can download the most recent benefits calculator tool and a preview of what the tool itself looks like, which we'll take a closer look at later. And a screenshot of the environmental co-benefits template and its couple of questions. So the fourth section is project readiness. There are no within application questions here, just places for attachments. And the attachments include attachment 7, project readiness, which contains questions about what permits may be required for the project's new installations or construction or composting activities. And attachment 7.1 is a place where documentation can be uploaded to support the responses in that project readiness document. These could include permit applications, already issued permits for a project, if there are any, existing permits to operate, communication with agencies, or references to local rules and regulations if a permit is not needed. One important note here, permit requirements do vary based on numerous factors, the type of project, location, and not all permits need to be in place upon application submission. However, applicants should still demonstrate knowledge of permits that are required and indicate how far along they may be in that permitting process. Applications that demonstrate a higher degree of project readiness may be eligible for a higher score under this criterion. So the fifth and last required section is benefits to priority populations. These application questions are essentially a direct reflection of the California Climate Investments Waste Diversion and Utilization Project evaluation criteria for providing benefits to priority populations. And they help us evaluate if projects will contribute meaningful benefits, such as reduction of odors and criteria air pollutants, to disadvantaged or low-income communities. Attachments are optional, but would be to support responses to the questions and benefits the project may provide. Projects are not required to provide benefits to priority populations. However, the projects that are determined to be providing benefits based on their responses and supporting documentation are eligible to receive additional points during the review process. So here's a visual of that project readiness template on the left, and on the right, a screenshot of the benefits to priority population criteria table and how they are reflected as questions in the application. So those were the 5 main AMP application sections. There is one optional section you'll see at the end of the application. This is a space to attach additional information that may not have fit or been appropriate in another section or attachment. It should be information you feel is important to support the proposal, though it shouldn't just be a catch-all. If this attachment is used, you must include a description of what specifically has been included, why, and which sections of the application are supported. Otherwise, it will not be used during evaluation of the application. And just a note on the naming of attachments. You'll find that in the application where the upload buttons are for attachments, a suggested file name is provided. This is to try and standardize things and also make it easier for anyone to just quickly identify documents, whether it's the applicants, people helping them submit, or our reviewers down the line. So the preferred format will identify the attachment number, the attachment name, and the name of the operation where the project is proposed. So all of those sections we talked about have assigned points, which you can see broken out here. AMP applications, once they're submitted, are evaluated through a multiple level financial and technical review and will receive a final score out of 100 per application. Separately, the points for applicants or applicant organizations who have not received AMP funding in the past will be applied to the final totals. And more information on the criteria considered within each of these scoring sections can be found in the Request for Grant Applications, Appendix E, Detailed Scoring Criteria. Just a few notes on things to keep in mind that can be helpful with the success and submission of an application. Consistency throughout the application and across attachments is important. For example, what project components are needed for the project and which are under AMP funding, or the number and type of animals included in the project boundary. Detail and clarity is key when describing the existing operation, so animals in the project boundary, their housing and manure management, as well as the proposed project, so things like barn design, maintenance steps, planned composting process, how manure management will change compared to the baseline. Keep in mind the people reviewing the application won't have the same level of familiarity as you about the operation and its management, and only have what is provided and described. Supporting documentation and data or even study citations can be helpful and strengthen claims made or numbers used in an application, whether it's about efficacy of a technology, estimated and projected use of electricity, or to show what permits are or are not needed. Operation-specific information and examples, rather than general kind of broad benefit language, can really help a proposal stand out, especially for categories like environmental co-benefits or benefits to priority populations. You know, what are the challenges facing this operation specifically and its surrounding communities and environment? I know that those are different depending on the region, you know, water, soil, regulations, and how is the project going to help address them? So also acknowledging there are 7 required attachments and maybe double that with optional attachments. So you're going to want good organization with file names and versions to make sure you're attaching what you actually want to submit. Please also try and finish and submit your application a bit early, if possible. This is an online application. We all know unexpected things can happen, and it's really stressful trying to field that kind of stuff too close to the deadline. During the submission process, there is an opportunity to download and review a copy of your application packet, so having some space for that could be good. And the application can still be viewed, just not edited following submission. So that was the bulk of the slides and content, and we're moving into the final portion on tools and resources with some demonstrations. First is a closer look at the benefits calculator tool, one of the main and really important parts of the AMP application. The California Air Resources Board developed this calculator tool to estimate the benefits specific for projects under the AMP program. And it pretty much looks at baseline or current scenario and compares it to a project scenario once an eligible practice is implemented, and calculates how that will result in avoided methane emissions from the anaerobic breakdown of manure. When you're filling out this tool, if specific questions arise, you can email ggrfprogram@arb.ca.gov. And you can download a copy of the latest calculator tool at the CCI resources page shown here, which is also linked in the RGA and on the program webpage. Between the last grant round and this one, the AMP benefits calculator tool only had some minor updates. We did work with a CARB to address a gap that was noticed last year during technical review. And now the calculator has the ability to account for natural gas use if a project selects forced evaporation by a natural gas fuel dryer for their manure treatment and/or drying method. Our CARB colleagues also took the opportunity to update fuel prices. But both of these updates were in the back-end data and calculations and did not alter the user interface or inputs. So now I'm going to demonstrate where to find the calculator and do a brief walkthrough of the tabs along with a simple example. So when you get to that CCI resources or CCI quantification page, this is what you're going to see, and you'll just have to navigate down to find the AMP program. So that is under Natural Resources and Waste Diversion, and AMP is right here. This is where then if you click calculator tool, it'll download a copy of that, that Excel tool for you. And let me pull up what that'll look like when you download and open it. Here's the calculator tool. We're going to go through the tabs one by one, starting with this README tab. Some general information is here. There's a link to a user guide that includes more details on use of this tool and some examples as well. So that will look like this here, a user guide. This also has that same GGRF program email mentioned already if you have specific questions about the use of the calculator. And there's a color code for cells, green for required, blue for optional. There's a couple others here. In the definitions tab, we have some references for the manure management system selections available in this tool. So when you're trying to figure out which manure treatment is closest to what you want to propose or which separation technology is, best matches the equipment you're interested in, you can go here. For example, stationary screen is the term used in the tool, but it refers to those with screens at an incline and commonly referred to as slope screen separators. And then compared that to a vibrating screen, which also uses gravity to separate, but are more like a horizontal table with a vibrating component where liquids fall directly below the screen. So the next is project information. This is some basics about your project. You can see just as you enter things, the required notification will go away. And so let's do a little bit of information here. And then the project data inputs tab. This is really the main information entry tab. This tool is based on location. So the first thing you're going to want to do is select through a drop down the location where the project is. Livestock population is this next section. It's only for animals whose manure will be affected by the AMMP project. There are drop down selections for the category here. And then you'll also enter the number. Let's say I've got these animals that are going to be affected by my project. Dairy applicant information. This is only for those where lactating cows are included, which I have here. So I'm going to enter my information. And then we get to the baseline manure management practices. So what's currently being done for the animals identified. Some of these cells you'll see are in black and it'll only open up and be relevant in certain situations. So if they are not for your case, don't worry about them. If I was doing a partial scrape or partial flush, it would allow me to enter more information about that. But we're going to go with flush here. You can enter time that animals spend at pasture, if any, whether there is any primary separation already going on. In this scenario, I'm going to just keep it at none, keep it real simple. If separation or scrape is already being done, how are those collected and separated solids being treated? So in my case, none. Is there any flocculant involved? I'm going to say no. And there's two inputs on energy consumption here associated with manure management. So how much electricity in megawatt hours and diesel gallons used on average over the past year. Again, associated only with manure management. So one thing that you'll see when you click on or select certain boxes, there may be additional guidance text or helpful instruction on how to complete things. For example, in this second stage solid separation, you'll see this little box pop up and it reads, only input a second stage if a second separator will remove additional volatile solids from the liquid effluent that has already undergone primary separation. If a separator is only used to dewater manure solids, or I guess a separator or separator component is only used to dewater manure solids that are coming off that primary separator, this section should be left blank. So my current simple example is a flush dairy, no solid separation. Down at the, well, I'll cover this table later. We're going to move on then to the project side, what's going to change. So this is where you'll start with the practice that you want to implement. And I'm going to pick solid separation with composting. You'll fill in the manure collection system. In my case, I'm going to keep it at flush. And no pasture, we're going to do a stationary screen separator. This composting bit is already filled in for me because of the practice I selected up here. I'm not going to use any flocculant to increase separation efficiency. And then I'm expecting my electricity to go up a little bit and my diesel to go down a little bit. So then we get to this qualitative table down at the bottom here to describe stationary and mobile sources associated with manure management activities. This does not factor into any calculations. It's just a way to describe what's going on with, say, the electricity and diesel or natural gas once a project is implemented. So here I had a few just populated already. The new separator, pumps, agitator will be new sources of electricity. Lagoon excavation is expected to decrease along with diesel use for that machinery. But I expect some increase as well from turning compost and hauling composted manure solids. So that's where I could enter something here. Pick a fuel type, and I'll just say increase. All right, so that's this tab. The next tab is the GHG summary. If everything has been filled out, this shows the summary calculations and kind of information, the emissions reductions anticipated, also, taking into account the amount of money for the project. So summary. The other output tab is about co-benefits. So it'll show changes to criteria and toxic air pollutant emissions reductions, soil health co-benefits if composting is involved, and some of those fossil fuel reductions based on my estimates for the before and after. And then also a calculated estimate on savings, or in this case, because it's negative, an increase projected for the operation for those energy costs over 5 years. The documentation tab is optional use. It's like a checklist to help you document completion of the tool. And for technical reviewers tab, this is as labeled for technical reviewers only. It has some additional details in the GHG calculations and an area that they can use to better account for an old existing separator in certain project types. So please do not use this tab. If a project does have an existing separator, it should be described in the narrative and/or attachment 5.1. Okay, so the last section here is listing out some of the resources available to prospective applicants. The RGA is the main source of information for program and application guidelines. We have an application checklist that you can use if helpful. It's essentially a bunch of lists for different sections and attachments and online application steps, just to use however suits you. There's a frequently asked questions document on the webpage, and we'll add separately 3 rounds of questions received and responses during the current application period. So the schedule for that is shown here and on the program webpage and in the RGA. Then there's the 2 CDFA application workshops, including the one today, and we'll plan to post slides and a recording on our webpage afterwards. For the benefits calculator, you can access the full quantification methodology for more details and background if you're interested. There's also that user guide linked in the calculator tool with examples that I showed you. We also have the AMMP project planning tool, which can be used for creating diagrams and visuals of an applicant's current operation and proposed project to support an application. It mirrors the benefits calculator tool and can assist with the quantification side of things as well. And then we do have Climate Smart Ag and Incentive Program technical assistance available free of charge through our CDFA grant-funded technical assistance providers and our partners at UC-ANR. They're able to assist with both the application process as well as project implementation if awarded. So to find someone in your region, please check out the links on the AMP webpage. And here we just have some references for more general resources if you want to learn more about the program, the practices, or hear from some of the past projects and recipients. So I mentioned an AMP project planning tool in applicant resources, and I wanted to share just a little bit more. A few years ago, we started working with the Conservation Biology Institute to develop a browser-based tool for AMP. It was intended to provide open access for applicants or anyone interested in exploring these types of practices to create maps showing their current setup and manure management and their proposed project. It can produce a PDF report at the end with user-created diagrams, which you could then use as part of your attachment 1 in an application with any other project design or sitemap documents. As mentioned, it was also built to mirror the benefits calculator tool and estimate GHG reduction for a given proposal being explored. And it can produce a partially populated copy of that spreadsheet too. It has been updated to reflect the current benefits calculator tool. So we're excited to have this tool available for a third grant round and worked with CBI to make sure some small improvements and bug fixes were made for user friendliness, and also to have it have more staying power over time. So its use is optional, but a picture can be worth 1,000 words in helping describe an operation and its proposed project. So we certainly encourage checking it out. I wanted to do just a short demo of some of it. I'll try and be quick here so that we have some time for questions. Just to show some of its features. So I guess we could start also with the AMP webpage. In case you haven't seen it yet, a lot of those, resources, outreach items, learning tools, our technical assistance providers are all here. This is also where you can get a link to that project planning tool. This is what the landing page looks like. It has some introduction and instructions, some information that would be helpful to have if you're using this tool. You'll use these begin and back and next buttons to navigate, not your browser back and various buttons. And what you can do is just locate your facility by entering an address or panning and zooming. So I'm just going to pick something here. You're going to draw a facility boundary to help define the parameters of your project. You can see there's just instructions for clicking how to create these things. When you've kind of done that facility thing, you can start building your baseline practices diagram, so what you're currently doing on the site. I'm going to keep this real simple and short for now. You can't add labels to these items. If you would like, let's do some wastewater storage and we'll just do an open lot corral here. So after you've kind of created your baseline map, you're going to go next and talk about the manure management practices. You'll notice that these fields pretty much reflect what we just saw on that benefits calculator tool. So because that's fresh in my mind, I'm just going to mirror what that example was like. If I can remember. All right, so then we're going to go next. You're halfway there. We're going to put in a little bit of information about the project. Again, the same kind of fields as in the calculator. Wanting to do solid separation with composting. And then I'm going to add my livestock types and numbers. So add more heifers. We've got our milk production that popped up if we're doing lactating animals. And then you have the opportunity to draw what the project is going to look like after a project. So this has a really handy feature for adding from the baseline. I can pretty much, that way I don't have to do them again. It's better not to. So here I've got my stuff, and then I'm going to add what's changing. So I'm going to add an element. Let's say I'm going to do a processing pit. Again, you can add labels. I'm going to look for adding my solid separator. Put that there. And I'm going to, let's say, add a area for my composting, storage and composting. All right, new. All right, so if I'm happy with that, I move on and then talk about, again, those calculator things for after the project is implemented. That's going to pop out an estimate for me, just like the calculator did here. I'm going to move on. So this is kind of good for if you're just exploring something. It allows you an opportunity to review your baseline and proposed maps. And when you're done, this is where you can then download a report and a partially populated calculator tool. As you can see, it'll give you a link to get back to your project if you want, or to share it. We've got an overview of the facility, what it looks like in the baseline with some notes if there were any inputted, and what it looks like in the proposed situation. So as you can see, this could be a pretty good way to describe what's going on in your application. And then similarly, the partially populated calculator tool. Opening, just give me one sec, is here. You'll probably have to click enable editing depending on your settings. But as you can see, it has the information that I entered through that web browser. The same GHG summary. And why I say partially populated, you would still need to finish some of this information and make sure to review everything for accuracy. There is no login for this tool, but it does have some ability to save your URL in the upper right. You can click this, save it to your bookmarks or in a document somewhere. You'll also have that report that has the link. Now, just keep in mind, these links will bring you back to the exact point when those links were created. So if you do go and make other changes, make sure to save yourself another URL. Okay. That was it. I know I'm running just a touch late, but let me check in about questions if there are any simple ones. Okay. I see that we have a question in the Q&A box about, will you be sending us a copy of today's webinar in form of screen prints? We're going to be posting this as a PDF of slides as well as a link to a recording. And sorry, I'm looking for the easy ones. Can you apply to AMP and DDRDP in the same round? If so, would they be judged individually or together? And would only one be awarded? We have a great answer for this in our FAQ document on the webpage. So please refer to that. You can apply to AMP and DDRDP in the same round, I'm assuming, yeah, for the same operation. However, these are vastly different projects in their scope and their requirements. So just keep in mind that that could be a lot of work. They will be reviewed separately. If both happen to make it through to do well enough for an award offer, only one would be able to accept that award. So I think that's the brief of it. But again, feel free to refer to our frequently asked questions document. Sorry, I should have clicked that first. If you apply for AMP or DDRDP and Dairy Plus, but after application or award decide not to proceed with Dairy Plus, would you lose AMP or DDRDP? Okay, I think I can answer that one briefly before moving on to the next section here. If you apply for AMP or DDRDP and Dairy Plus, again, it'd be the same operation. But after application or award decide not to proceed with Dairy Plus, would you lose AMP or DDRDP? I don't believe you would automatically. They are they're separate programs, separate funding sources. Yes, they are closely tied potentially, but it wouldn't mean an automatic loss if AMP and DDRDP are handled separately. So Anything to add on those, Roberta, or?
No, you handled perfectly. Yeah, as you mentioned, separate programs being analyzed separately. That may be that us, in case you are awarded AMP or DDRDP and decide not have Dairy Plus, we'll need to maybe, check if everything is still making sense and even possibly amend things. But it's a very in the future if situation, but you wouldn't lose your AMP or DDRDP because of that.
Perfect. And there is one more question I see. I'll leave that to the Dairy Plus side because I think it'll be more relevant there. So let me go ahead and move on then to the online application portal demo. And then I will need to take a break for water. So, okay, let me go off screen again. All right, so let me pull in my... So in this segment of the webinar, I'll demonstrate the online application platform for AMP. However, it has essentially the same structure as DDRDP, although DDRDP has a separate portal link. And for AMP and DDRDP applicants interested in Dairy Plus as well, they will also just use these two portals for AMP or DDRDP. I'll be showing you where you can find the Dairy Plus application section within the AMP portal, if that is something you will be pursuing. And just note there are some navigation tips here, most of which I think I'll cover in the demo, but they will be here in the slides for reference as well. All right. Where is... So once again, you can get to these portals by going to our program web pages, and there's a submission portal link. That would take you to the real one. I'm going to be using a test copy, but when you click that link, you'll essentially end up on a landing page just like this. You can see that there's some information about the grant opportunity. And then you're going to click apply. As mentioned, you will be prompted to register or log in if you have an existing account. All right, so now I'm ready to apply. I'm going to click apply again. As you notice here, if I've started or have submitted more than one application, they're going to show up here. So I can then access these again if I would like to. Otherwise, I will click start a new application. Once you're in here, you can see there's 4 application buttons or pages. You can kind of move between these at will. You'll always want to save any information you may have put in, but you don't have to necessarily finish an entire one before moving on or checking out the others. The opportunity details is pretty much what you saw on the landing page. It's informational only. And then we have project information. This is I guess before I go further, I know this is a webinar, and to be honest, I think the default text for this Amplifund system is a little bit small. So if it's easier for you, just make sure to zoom your browser a little bit. So I'll go ahead and do that. You can do that through your browser settings, or if you hold Control and press minus or plus, you can do that too. So project information, this is a fairly short page, required part of all Amplifund applications. Some items of note. This page requires application name and primary contact information name. These are going to be some of the primary identifiers for the project on the Amplifund side. So it's going to show up, for example, in submission confirmation emails. So in that sense, it'd likely be helpful to have a unique operation name be the application name, or at least part of the application name here, such as Pippin Dairy or Pippin Dairy's AMP project. Then we've got some other information. Well, I can finish this later. Let me save and see if it'll, nope. All right, let me move on for now. Application forms is the second part. This is where you'll see a link to the program application, the main AMP application. And I'll go through this in just a little bit. You'll see there's a status here. If nothing's been done, it will show new. If some parts have been filled in, it will show as in progress. And last is the submit page up here. This is going to be grayed out. As you can see, I can't click on it. until you successfully complete and mark as complete the fillable pages, which are the project information and application form pages. And when you do submit an application, the primary contact identified on that project information page should receive an automated message from the system. Please note that in emails entered under the application form, such as submitter information, applicant information, will not receive a notification automatically, but those are really important for the program itself. And so that brings me to some of the important user functions like the save button. Save often, as the system will initiate a timeout of your session periodically, even if you're somewhat around and doing stuff, so that's not fun. You'll also see a mark as complete button at the end of these kind of fill-in pages. Once you've filled in all required fields on these 2 pages, it'll allow you to mark it as complete. And you'll need to have this marked on both before you can actually submit, as mentioned. Let me just do a really quick thing to show you. I don't think it's going to flag me for some of this. So you can see that came, I'll save. I'm going to mark it as complete. And then if I went to submit, it would not flag me for having project information incomplete anymore. I would still need to do application forms though. If you do need to make edits or you just don't want to flag it as complete yet, you can click Mark as in progress to reopen it up. And then let's take a look real quick at the program application form itself a little bit more. So I'm going to go to application forms and open the program application. Again, save is here and also at the bottom. Make sure to use that a lot. There's a little bit of basic information up here. As we described in the AMP presentation so far, we have applicant information, areas where you can use drop-downs or text fill-ins, some additional demographic information, and some information on the project location. When you do come across links such as this one to help find your Assembly and Senate district, we do recommend to open links in a new tab. Now, the good thing is we should have already set all these links open this year to open in a new tab to prevent mishaps. So if I click this, it's going to go, it won't take me away from the application. But if you ever did want to be sure, you can always right-click a link and say open in a new tab or a new window. And then after that general information, we get to the really important application category. So this is where you're going to want to read the instructions for what you select based on what you're applying for. It is fairly intuitive and you can read the instructions, but if you're applying for 2024 AMP, you're going to select yes. If you're applying for the 2024 Dairy Plus, you're going to select yes. If you're only applying for one or the other, select yes for the one you want and no for the other. And if you're applying for both, select yes on both. So you can play around with this to just, check it out or see. But I will warn you that if you have filled out information in one of these and then you select no and it goes away, the platform may not save it. So I wouldn't do that if you've already kind of used the section and intend to keep it. So as mentioned, if I'm selecting yes for 2024 AMP here, you can see that it has opened up the AMP application sections. These are all the ones that we reviewed in the AMP portion. There are various areas for inputting information, again, within the application itself, and then those attachment buttons. So here's that, and you can click and include an attachment. Let's see, just scrolling down, your templates and various resources are linked here that you can use if needed. We'll go all the way down just to see those AMP sections really quickly, sorry. And then if I say, want to also apply for Dairy Plus, because that was the end of the AMP application, I would select yes here. And now when I go down to the bottom of AMP, here's that last additional information section. Instead of it being just the save or the mark as complete buttons, we see the Dairy Plus sections down here. So again, this will be the same function as in the DDRDP application platform. Similarly, there are things to fill in, there are links to resources, and places for attachments. Okay, I guess I wanted to real quick show you when you are logged in, you can go to the upper right-hand corner and go to account information. This is a great place to look for a list of applications that you've either started or submitted over the duration of your account. So that can be really helpful. You can locate your application ID in this list as well. And once an application has been submitted, so let me actually open up one of my submitted test ones. You're going to see this. You can still go and review your program application. You'll see the status is complete. If you go to the Submit tab, it'll show that successfully submitted. And I thought that, that's weird. This is why we don't care for Amplifont. You'll see this, you may see this withdraw button in big red letters. Only click this if you truly want to fully withdraw your application from the solicitation, which is fine, but you won't be able to resubmit it if you withdraw it. So it'd have to be a true, I decided not to apply. If you have submitted an application and you need to make a correction or edit, you've gone back and reviewed and you realize something was wrong. If it's before the deadline, you can email the program. We should be able to reopen it for you on the back end. If reopening is necessary, it's going to be your responsibility to make sure it is fully resubmitted by the application deadline. Okay, I think I hopefully covered most of the things I wanted to share on that platform. So because I'm a little over time again, I'm going to stop. Again, these kind of navigation tips will be available for you on the slides. And I'd like to turn it over to get started on the Dairy Plus program.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Alyssa. Okay, so hi, everyone. My name is Todd Griffin, and I'll be speaking a little bit about the newest program on advanced manure management, which is the Dairy Plus program. Can you all hear me just fine, Roberta and Alyssa?
Yes, all clear.
I don't want to wait 5 minutes and then find out that I've been talking in. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. Go ahead, next slide, Alyssa. Okay, so pretty straightforward. The 85 million for the Dairy Plus sector, or California dairy sector. So before I talk about specifics of the Dairy Plus program, I want to talk give a little more context about how it was created. So the Dairy Plus program was actually created from an awarded grant submitted by the California Dairy Research Foundation, which is the CDRF, to the USDA USDA Partnership for Climate Smart Commodities program, with the support of all or more of the entities listed here, including CDFA. The project was titled Partnering to Invest in and Build Markets for California's Climate Smart Dairy Producers. And so as the heading shows, this project was awarded 85 million to CDRF. Of that total, the direct to farmers, CDFA received a sub-award of approximately 75 million for this grants. Go ahead, next. I'll give a little program overview here. So, 1 second. Okay, so the goal. So it's a program that will award competitive grants to California dairy farmers for the implementation of advanced manure management practices. I focus on advanced, that reduce methane emissions and address nitrogen and salt surplus. These grants are for practices that go beyond the traditional AMP and DDRDP programs. As you can see, the funding for years 24-25, total remaining funds are approximately $58 million, being a max of $1.25 million per project at $750 per cow. As part of the USDA's and CDFA's priorities, this program will carve out at least 10% of total funds, which is about $7.5 million of the original grant award that was received by CDFA, to small and historically underserved producers throughout the program's lifetime. As you can see, this program, it builds on the existing AMP and DDRDP programs, and it is essentially a supplement of those programs. The eligibility, so for those, and for those who are eligible to apply, they must be a California dairy producer or farmer, not a foreign entity, new or in progress or even previous successfully completed AMP or DDRDP projects. And the duration of these projects, so once awarded, the producer has exactly 24 months to complete the grant project, and all producers will be paid on a reimbursement basis, proof of expenditure, proof of matching funds, if applicable, receipts and invoices, reimbursements to be required. And I want to add a note on this is the program includes other requirements and conditions. However, you can get familiar with Dairy Plus program's website and download the most recent request for grant application, which is the RGA, to learn more about those details. Also, as an additional reminder, since the program is funded with federal money, the program must adhere to various state and federal rules and regulations. So that's just a good reminder for everyone. Okay, next. Thank you. Okay, eligible practices. Before I start talking about the practices for AMP Dairy Plus and DDRDP Dairy Plus, I want to point out that the practices in the Dairy Plus program also exist or incentivized in AMP. Although the programs are interconnected, they are treated completely different. So that said, an applicant must propose two different systems if they are applying for a 2024 AMP, DDRDP, and Dairy Plus. Also, if they already have an AMP or DDRDP project completed, they must propose a comprehensive project to add to the existing practice. They cannot expand on the same practice or recover costs from what is already completed. And then for eligible practices, starting with those interested in the new 2024 AMP DDRDP Dairy Plus for in progress or for those awarded in the past. Let's see. Or not next slide, let's see. I kind of want to go into the practices a little bit. So vermifiltration, as you can see, it must be implemented in conjunction with a new or existing primary mechanical separator. And so I get this question on some of the meetings. And so what better way to explain the definition or information on what vermifiltration is than having the USDA's definition. So it is an on-farm wastewater treatment system composed of a bed of organic media, such as wood chips or sawdust, seeded with earthworms that biooxidize applied waste, outputting effluent that is lower in nutrients and vermicompost that can be sold for profit while reducing emissions of greenhouse gases and other air pollutants. The next primary practice we have is the solid separation of manure solids through weeping wall. The system must have a minimum of at least 2 cells. And weeping walls are a system that separates solids and liquids by using gravity. The system consists of 2 basins constructed of concrete and perforated weeping material separated by a drainage channel. Manure is added to the basin. Liquids then drain through the weeping walls into the drainage channel while retaining solids in the basin. The solids from the basin are then recycled as bedding, soil amendments, marketed as for additional income. And the third primary practice we have is advanced solid liquid separation assisted by flocculants and or bead filters. Again, this must be implemented in conjunction with an existing or new primary mechanical separator. And so the polymer flocculant practice is a solid liquid separation using polymers to aggregate suspended solids to form settleable particles and convert particles into large, rapidly settling flocks or flocculation. And then most recently, the addition we have centrifuge solid liquid separation must be implemented again in conjunction with an existing or new primary mechanical separator. And so I'm providing examples. So a decanter centrifuge is a self-contained machine that uses a high rotational speed, centrifugal force to separate solids and liquids of manure and wastewater that originates from washing areas and the process of flushing cow cow alleys, and the practice must be implemented in conjunction, again, with an existing or new primary mechanical separator. And then in addition to those 4 primary practices for the AMMP Dairy Plus portion, there are secondary practices. So practices above, which are A, B, C, D, and subsurface drip irrigation, which is SDI, or practices A, B, C, and D above and aerated composting. And then I can dive in a little bit. So subsurface drip irrigation is fertilizing with liquid manure through a specialized subsurface drip system as opposed to a flood irrigation. So that would be a secondary practice in addition to the primary. And then the aerated composting, I kind of broke it out right here where we have, I won't spell it all out, but I'll say that of the, there's 5 main types of aerated composting, which is composting in a vessel, composting at aerated static pile, composting intensive windrows, composting in passive windrows, and composting in aerated vermifiltration system. Okay, next slide. Okay, eligible practices for new 2024 in progress or previously completed DDRDP projects. So this is DDRDP Dairy Plus. Applicants that are in progress are those who have a closeout or operational DDRDP project. So once again, this is kind of, it's very similar to the AMP Dairy Plus portion. We have a post-digester vermifiltration, and I won't go through the definitions again, but it gives you an idea. We have the post-digester vermifiltration. Second practice, we have a post-digester advanced solid liquid separation assisted by flocculants and or bead filters. And then third primary would be a post-digester through centrifuge of solid liquid separation. For these practices, of these 3, the secondary practice you can implement is a subsurface, an SDI using liquid manure digestate for the DDRDP Dairy Plus. We have a disclaimer here. It's very important. So Dairy Plus funds cannot be used to fund the implementation and maintenance of, including but not limited to, anaerobic digesters, biogas cleanup equipment, biogas upgrading equipment, the pipelines, electricity generators, and all systems related to anaerobic digestion and biogas end use. So please keep this in mind when preparing your budgets and be as clear as you can when you are asking for the Dairy Plus program for reimbursement if it's related to DDRDP Dairy Plus. Okay, next. Ooh, funding scenarios. Okay, so I kind of highlighted a couple of little sections specific to Dairy Plus. We've given examples in the past of state funding portions, but I kind of want to focus on the federal funding. So here's a slide with all the information on state and federal funding an applicant would be eligible to receive depending on what category they fit. So this information is available in the RGA, which is posted on the Dairy Plus websites as well. It's taken directly off there, so if you wanted to take a look at it, you could. So as far as program system, as mentioned in eligible practices, primary practices for AMP Dairy Plus include, and I just kind of go over this, is vermifiltration, weeping wall, advanced solid liquid separation, again with flocculants, bead filters, and finally centrifuge. And then the eligibility secondary practices for these AMP projects it lists out, which is the SDI and aerated composting. And similar to the AMP Dairy Plus, we have the DDRDP Dairy Plus, which is the 3 primary practices plus the 1 secondary. As I mentioned before, so the funding for these projects, applicants may request up to 1.25 million at a max of 750 per cow for each category of Dairy Plus. So I kind of highlighted right there in the center, specific to Dairy Plus, they can request that much in funding. What's interesting this year is, which is good, is for the AMP Dairy Plus for new projects, there are no matching funds required for those projects. So that is also highlighted in the upper right-hand corner. And what you might ask what a matching fund is. A matching fund is a portion of the project costs not borne by the Dairy Plus program. Matching contributions include allowable cash costs incurred that are directly related to the implementation of the project, supplies, materials, equipment, contractor consultant fees, and other associated project costs. And on this one, I wanted to make a note that also please pay special attention to the Dairy Plus for previous AMP and previous Dairy Plus DDRDP requiring of the matching funds. I did not highlight those sections, but as you can see below, there's 50-50 contributions up to a certain amount. You can look through that a little bit, and we can talk more about that later. All right, next. Okay. And as Alyssa had already shown us, this is the how to apply section. Using AMPLIFund, this is directly from the Dairy Plus website. So you'll see the 2024 AMP application submission portal, and then you'll see the 2024 DDRDP application submission portal. The online application for Dairy Plus is not a standalone application submission portal, but instead integrated as an option within AMP and also an option within DDRDP. To access these portals, just go to the main page again. Okay, and an example of for a new or in progress or previous AMP recipient applying for Dairy Plus, to further enhance the AMP manure management system, they would use the AMP application submission portal for AMP only, AMP Dairy Plus, or Dairy Plus program only for past successfully completed AMP projects. And that's going to be the same process for the DDRDP. Even though they're separate links, it's a very similar process. If you're applying for DDRDP only, DDRDP Dairy Plus, or Dairy Plus for past DDRDP recipients, successfully recipients. At the very bottom, we have includes, tripping over my words. At the very bottom, include a closeout of AMP projects that want to join the DDRDP. So we just make a note saying basically, we'll take those AMP applicants that now want to build a digester system instead, if they would or would not like to add the Dairy Plus program as well. Okay, next. Again, we have how to apply. So as shown in the AMPLIFund demonstration, there will be project information and an application form to complete, regardless of applicant. More specific to Dairy Plus is under the application forms. There is application category section where you will select if you're applying for Dairy Plus, either in conjunction with the new 2024 project. And yeah, again, it's the same process, looking at the opportunity details, project information, application forms, and then submit yeah. Okay, I think that's good on that. Next. Okay, perfect. After you apply, you have these drop downs. So here you'll see a screenshot of the application category, selection question. We'll see yes, and the Dairy Plus specific application questions will show up that need to be completed. So in this example, we selected no at the top for AMP and then yes for Dairy Plus, so we can just focus on just showing the Dairy Plus portion, which Alyssa has already shown us. You fill in the drop-down type questions if you follow the red arrows, producer name, as well as section for project description. And then also new this year will be the section 2. Instead of nutrient management, we are focusing on nitrogen and salt management and water quality improvement. So that's kind of a revision from the old, slightly a revision from the old program. Okay, and I have a note for myself as well that save often, because when I was running through the test trials or test process as well, I was filling in information and I wasn't saving often and it didn't save. And so I would say that it follows the same general pointers, the AMP and AMPLIFund demonstration. Again, save often, fill out all required fields, marked with an asterisk. And then before the project information or application forms pages let you mark as complete, all pages must be marked as complete before the application can be submitted. So it's a good reminder over and over again. Okay, next slide. For the attachments. Okay, this year, I think last year was 5 required attachments and a few optional. This year we have 7 required attachments, so an additional 2, but I would say most projects, it makes sense. So let's talk about the required attachments. So again, Dairy Plus is a separate program but must supplement the new, in progress, or previously completed AMP or Dairy Plus program. Even reviewers evaluating a portion of the application will not be the same ones evaluating the AMP or DDRDP program. That means that if you put in information on the AMP or DDRDP sections that actually belong to Dairy Plus, the reviewers for Dairy Plus won't be able to see those if they are not included on the attachments. And vice versa. Please do not have AMP or DDRDP required information in this section, as the reviewers for those programs won't be able to evaluate or see the portion of those applications. That's a lot of words. Okay, so we have attachment A. I'm just going to kind of give you an overview. Attachment A is required. Attachment A1, a little bit smaller, but it's a subcategory. It's usually provided with the project description template. Makes more sense. And then attachment A2 is required. It's newer as well. It's a signed FSA Farm Service Agency permission form. And then attachment B required, which is the work plan template, and attachment C, which is nitrogen, salt, and water quality improvements template. I'm going to go into a little bit of details. This information is what you'll find on the RGA as well. So the project description template should not be more than 15 pages. I guess we've gotten quite a few. The project description must contain a summary of the operations background, their herd details, selected funding scenario, eligible project types for consideration of the proposal, and project sustainability beyond the project term. Additionally, it should explain how the Dairy Plus program funded advanced manure management practices will provide benefits and co-benefits beyond the traditional state-funded programs such as AMP and DDRDP. And it'll provide additional greenhouse gas emission reductions and improve nitrogen and salt management. The description should also explain how the project will positively affect the local community and the environment. And finally, the long-term comprehensive long-term plans for both maintenance and improved functionality must be included in attachment A. For attachment A1, for the site plan, we have site plan, project design documents, schematic designs, permitting, maintenance plans, evidence for providing benefits to priority populations. I wanted to add a note here that the site plans must include a map of the facility specifically indicating the location of the project installation. The project designs must include numerical depth, widths of construction area criteria, and then project design schematics and designs are required to be final at the time of the application submittal. Any changes requests must be received within 40 to 5 days of approval and will require authorization and are subject to approval. An additional note is all project design components, including pipeline, cement, electrical, etc., must be clearly identified as reimbursable or matching funds for these specific Dairy Plus programs in attachment D of the budget worksheet. If there are revisions to it, sometimes it causes delays because we need approval from CDRF as well as approval from the USDA for certain projects. So it's not just on CDFA. For attachment 2, pretty simple. Assigned FSA permission form. Awardees must establish the Farm Service and Farm Service Agency, FSA, which includes the farm, tract, field numbers, etc. Signing the FSA permission form provides CDRF with permission to work with FSA on the awardee's behalf upon award to complete the USDA environmental review, i.e. the CPA 52 approval process in a timely-er manner. It's been a little bit timely, so we're hoping to get through that a little bit quicker on this next round. For attachment B, work plan template, the work plan must be clearly describe the tasks and activities required to accomplish goals and objectives in the proposed project description. It must identify measurable targets and timelines and include the evaluation component to measure the success of the project and determine whether the project objectives were accomplished. So we have start and finish dates and who's going to be performing these tasks. And then attachment C, the nitrogen and salt management, water quality improvement attachment should provide detailed information and literature, review on how the proposed advanced manure management practices will improve nitrogen and salt management and water quality on the dairy farm. Applicants should describe the current nitrogen and salt management issues in the dairy operation, the importance of the proposed project for reducing or mitigating excess nitrogen and salts, pollutants to the groundwater and waterways, and any extra co-benefits provided by the proposed initiative. Applicants should also discuss the plan for monitoring and evaluating if the proposed project is effective in improving nitrogen and salt management and water quality on the dairy farm, the region, as well as maintenance of direct benefits and co-benefits achieved over the years. Okay, next. A lot of words for a single slide. Sorry, guys. Attachment D. So this is required. Budget worksheet. Yes. So budget worksheet should provide a clear accounting of costs, work hours, equipment associated with all activities necessary to complete the project. The cost and equipment should include all project design components, including but not limited to, again, pipeline, cement, electrical. I have to keep repeating this. And so the cost must be clearly identified and reported in the budget worksheet. Applicants must also identify the Dairy Plus program funds requested, the source and amount of matching, cash if applicable, funds and in-kind contributions, state and federal funds, and all other funding sources necessary to complete the project. It's important that the budget worksheet may be complete with all the aspects. It should be complete with all the aspects of the project, which includes the matching funds. D1 is optional. Bids, quotes, estimates for support budget costs. This one's a little tricky. So attachment D1 is include the bids, quotes, and all that. While complete documentation is not required for the application, is strongly encouraged. Applicants are also encouraged to obtain multiple estimates to ensure costs are reasonable and consistent with the market rate. The reason why I say this one's a little tricky is so we have to keep in mind that the time between the application and start date of the project can be 6 to 12 months in the future. There have been certain delays with this first round, and so we understand that prices and bids may have slightly changed over time. So just keep in mind whenever you're getting those potential bids, quotes, and estimates. Attachment E, let's see, estimated greenhouse gas or emission reductions. So reductions and environmental benefits with the AMP and DDRDP benefits calculator. We're going to expand a little bit more on this in the next slide. But before I go there, we're going to do two more optional attachments, which is explanation of assumptions for the greenhouse gas calculations. So if applicable, supporting documentation for the herd size, for the past 12 months, milk production values used in the calculator, current usage, and or methods used to estimate pre and post project diesel or electricity. And attachment E2, description of how the proposed project will reduce it and beyond. And so beyond the AMP or DDRDP proposed practices at the dairy operation. So those are just a little summary of attachments, of required ones as well as optional ones. Next, I'm going to have Roberta give a little bit more details on the attachment E, which is the estimated greenhouse gas emissions, and there's also the calculators. So go ahead and take it away, Roberta.
Thank you, Todd. No, thank you very much. Yeah, so just would like to talk a little bit more about the attachment E, which is the estimated GHG emissions reduction. And that's, again, and if you were here for the AMP presentation, you saw Alyssa talking about the AMP benefits calculator too. But that said, so it will be very similar to what she has presented in the past, and I will actually give some examples for you, very simple ones, nothing in too much detail, but just to give you an idea of what those will look like. So just wanted to point out, and I think that's regarding one of our questions in the Q&A. So if you are applying for a new 2024, are in progress, or a previously complete AMP project, you're going to use the calculator tool for the Alternative Manure Management Program. If you are going to apply for DDRDP, a new or in progress of previously complete DDRDP, then please use the calculator tool for the dairy digesters. So that's a very important, because and I will show you on the example, they are completely different tools, and they cannot, be they're not transferable. They are very different tools. So let me see. Let me give an example really quick, and then once I come back, I would like to go back to this slide once again. So let me just share my screen. So first of all, just give me a second. Sorry, kind of slow still at doing that. Okay, so this is the page you need to go, and after on when we come back, I'll show
Hey,
you.
Roberta. Sorry, I don't see it. Let me try stop share. I thought you would be able to override that, but maybe it was just mine. Okay.
Yeah, I see it on my screen. I see Roberta's.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, it's good that we confirm you're seeing the right thing. Okay. So if you can see, I am at the California Air Resource Board web page. That's the CCI quantification benefits and reporting materials. And Alyssa already gave the link, but we'll give in the next slide too for you. So I would recommend here, if you press the buttons in your keyboard, Control and F, you'll be able to, for example, write alternative, and then you can get quickly to the tools that you're gonna need. For example, here I put alternative, right away it came to the alternative manure management. So if I'm gonna use for the AMP project, so the DDRDP AMP, I'm gonna download this link, the calculator tool, and I won't do this right now, but just for you to have an idea. And if you need the dairy digester calculator tool, the latest one, you're just gonna click here for calculator tool. So yeah, just wanted to show you this to you before I get to the examples. So I'm gonna give 3 examples today. 2 are gonna be for AMP, and 1 are gonna be for is gonna be for DDRDP. So my first example, I will use the example that Alyssa gave, but I'm gonna build on that. So my first example here is that I am a new AMP project. So I'm gonna apply for the first time this year, and I have filled out my AMP application or my AMP calculator for the AMP application. Because remember, you need to fill out two calculators if you're applying as new. You need to do the calculator that is for the AMP situation, and then you need to do a calculator that is for the Dairy Plus AMP situation. They are different, and let me show you why. So here I was using exactly the same example Alyssa put it. So Sacramento is my county. I have lactating dairy cows here, about 1,200 of them. Then I have heifers on feed, 600 of them. I put here my milk fat, milk protein, and milk produced. And then, so here is what she gave you as an example. So my baseline was flush. I don't have any solid separation at the moment. I don't do any storage or treatment practice at the moment. And no, I'm not using flocculant to increase efficiency as my baseline. And this, I just inputted, she has some numbers of how much electricity and diesel usage I have. So here, this is the example exactly for AMP. So let's say it's like, okay, for AMP, I asked for a stationary screen, but for Dairy Plus, I want to build on that. So let's say I want to apply for a flocculant and bead filter or bead filter assisted separation. So here I'm gonna still have solid separation. In this case, I chose with composting, but it could be something else. It could be, solid separation with aerated or solid separation with, now my tool is kind of buggy. Okay, but it could be other. I chose solid separation compost. I still will have my background has flush. So here you can see the other options. In this case, I still will keep that stationary screen that I have put it for the base for the project in AMP, but because I'm gonna put it as a flocculant or bead filter system, I'm gonna put another solid separation because that system itself comes with a solid separation. And in this case, I'm using a screw press. It could be other, I'm just giving an example. So here, I put the screw press, and then it's gonna have me answer this question. Is a flocculant used to increase separation? In this case, I will say yes, because I'm gonna use flocculants for my situation. So you are seeing, because this is a new project, I'm starting here giving examples about my farm before any AMP or any project. And then I give the situation of how it would like after I install the AMP and after I install the Dairy Plus. So hopefully that helps. So here, then you could see what is your GHG reduction. So we got a 28,000, your co-benefits, and so forth. Okay, that's one example. So brand new project, how the calculator will behave. Now I'm gonna give you an example of, I already have an AMP project. This is it's in progress, or I already completed. And so I want to build from that. So here the same, so let's pretend I have that same farm and same characteristics. But here you'll see that I already have a stationary screen at the baseline of the project. So my project already started that I had the separation, a solid separation system. I already do compost in windrows, and no, I don't use flocculants because this is like a normal AMP. So let's say that now with this system, I want to apply for, let's say, vermifiltration. So I come here, I will look for solid separation with aerated vermifiltration. Here, instead of flush, we have aerated vermifiltration system, which I admit is a little tricky because you still actually have a flush system, but for the calculator, it was a way to trigger to say for the vermifiltration. So just pay attention on this one. Here I have still the stationary screen that still stays the same. I don't have any extra separation. I could, like, imagine if you like, I want to put an extra separator in addition to my stationary screen, not needed. And here I put no because I'm not adding flocculant to my system. It's just the vermifiltration. So that, if you go in your co-benefits, you're gonna see a reduction of 21,000 for your system here. So hopefully this gave you a little idea of how to fill out your calculator if you had a project or if you're brand new. And now, before I move on, I also would like to show an example for a dairy digester situation. Very brief, and this calculator, I tell you, it's much more complex in terms of choices. So be very careful of the choices you select here because they have big impact. Even these blackout fields, like, make sure if you're not using them, they are empty. So in my example here for the Dairy Plus DDRDP, I am putting I have a new digester. So this, I'm just applying for DDRDP this year. And so here I'm choosing, I have a covered lagoon. I'm injecting renewable natural gas to the pipeline 100% of the time. So this is all zero because you're not transporting the biogas. So in this case, I don't have a solid separation, but with the project, I will have a stationary screen. And here is actually where the whole difference is gonna be, is this question 4 here. That's what's gonna trigger your Dairy Plus in case you like to attach to a DDRDP. So once you open this window, you have four situations. You have an effluent pond without post-digester solid separation. So this is just a normal effluent pond, no treatment. Then it will give me another 3 ones that are for Dairy Plus. So a effluent pond with centrifuge, a effluent pond with advanced solid separation with flocculants and or bead filters, and aerated vermicompost. So let me say I will choose aerated vermicompost. So now my project here is indicated that not only I have a digester all incorporated, but that I'm going to treat my effluent with vermicomposting. So that here you see all the other information that the calculator required, the amount of animals, how you treat the remaining that is not going to the digester, electricity, equipment. Again, much more of a complex calculator. So I will not be doing a good job if I just really quickly say like, oh, this is it. Please study your calculator before. So here in this case, and let me go to technical review for you to see, my project is going to result in 121,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide reduced in 10 years. So that's the value we were looking for. So, okay, I think that's all in terms of example. Let's go back to the slides. Let me just clear my camera is weird. Okay, so going back to this slide because of the caveats. When you're applying for under Dairy Plus for previous and or in progress AMP, you must add the information about your previous and in progress grant into the baseline. So just like that example I gave on the second example, you need to put your project that it's already in place or being funded into the baseline. And then for this now, applying under Dairy Plus for previous or in progress DDRDP category, you must submit 2 separate DDRDP applications. So this is not for that example I gave, that was a brand new digester. In case you already had a digester and you are applying only for Dairy Plus. So you need to submit 2 calculators. One, just showing what your digester alone represents. And we are doing that because we want to use the latest calculator. And because these calculators every year, they go to a process of refreshing. And so numbers may have changed from what originally they were. And so we just want a calculator that represents just the digester. And then we also will ask you a calculator that incorporates the Dairy Plus practice, like I showed you in the example, which is just that window. It's not much work extra for the Dairy Plus. Okay, I think that's all for this slide. So next slide. This is just information about where you can get those calculators. And whatever you have questions about the programs themselves, we can help you. But if it's regarding the calculator and something like if you find a glitch or something weird with the calculator, then I beg you to email the Air Resource Board for giving you more help on the calculator itself. I believe that's all I have to share today, if I'm not mistaken. And I will pass back to Todd.
Thanks, Roberta. Okay, so we're almost done, folks. Almost done with Dairy Plus. Sorry, there's still DDRDP. Sorry, Rosie. So we have just a little bit more to go. I wanted to summarize. So the greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So we already discussed attachment A, which is project design, description template, attachment A1, site plans, A2, FSA, attachment B, work plan, attachment C, nitrogen and salt management, and then attachment D, which is the budget worksheet, and lastly was the greenhouse gas attachment E. So once you have all the attachments, once you have the project ready to go, let me go here. So we have a scoring criteria. Once you apply for the grant, the scoring criteria has various categories and maximum points. And so I just kind of briefly go over this as an FYI. The project description of the work plan is 20 points. Nitrogen salt management and water quality improvements, 10 points. Budget worksheet is 10 points. And estimated greenhouse gas emission reduction is 10 points for a total of 50 points versus 100 points like the other program. I would say that it's important to focus on all sections to make sure you're as thoroughly as possible. And I'll even go into that in the next slide. Go ahead, Alyssa. So the helpful tips is basically read through the whole RGA, the request for grant applications. It's available on the Dairy Plus website. Save often once you get into the Amplifund portal. And follow instructions. Follow instructions provide specific details of the operation, specific to your operation or your project. So we want to see that, sometimes similar projects are almost templates for other projects. So we want to make sure that if it's specific to your operation, it needs to provide specific details, like what are the issues that need to be addressed, how the Dairy Plus program will help your operations reduce greenhouse gases, address nitrogen and salt surplus, etc., and why you need the funds to go above or to go beyond the traditional AMP and DDRDP project for your specific project. So once you follow all instructions, you'll be addressing all questions, providing applicable information, and then make sure all attachments have been properly uploaded and you're not missing anything. You don't want to get docked any points once you submit these projects. There is a process that you can go through to resubmit or change stuff, but once these projects are going through, it's just best to have it all complete and as thorough as possible. So next slide. Where are we? So CDFA grant solicitation process. We've had updates, lots of updates, even to the language, the written, everything. And so updates to the draft RGA, public comments. So we are here. We're at finalize and release grant solicitation. We did that in July 23rd. Next is review of submitted applications. You have all the way until I think it was October 18th. Award announcement, grant execution process, grant agreement process, and then project verification, completion, and follow-up and monitoring. So it's kind of like the next steps for us during this time. Okay, next. As a reminder, yeah, there we go, the dates. Dairy Plus program timeline. So we have the dates, as I just mentioned. Workshops are today and next week on the 13th. Then CDQAP, CDRF has a workshop on August 29th. Grant applications are due on October 18th, so we have some time, but don't wait to the last minute. And then review process is all the way from November through February of 2025. There's a little asterisk right there because it is all subject to change. So it's in the future, it's not concrete dates, but we plan to have the review process end in February. We plan to announce awards in March, and then project term begins, so signed fully executed agreement September of 2025 based on the timeline of this year. If we can get it done earlier, that'd be wonderful. But we just wanted to make everyone aware that that's the goal, that's the anticipated timeline. Again, if we can get it done earlier, we will. All right, next slide. So Dairy Plus program technical assistance is provided by our wonderful friends at CDRF. This is, their Dairy Plus program technical assistance contact for Denise. She helps us out. We work with her every week, and she's wonderful. So there's an email, there's a contact phone, and next slide. You can also email questions specific for Dairy Plus at this cdfa.ofi_. I didn't create this, folks, but okay, cdfa.ofi_Dairy Plus at cdfa.ca.gov. That's our standard. Please add 2024 Dairy Plus program question in the email and the subject line for questions about this program, and then Q&As will be posted according to a timeline, which I'm going to show you pretty soon. Let's see, next slide. There it is. Okay, so CDFA posts the FAQs, so the frequently asked questions to address general program questions. We'll be answering these questions in a moment, but we have received some in the email, and we want to make sure we have time to prepare a thorough response and also provide it for public. So any questions received by August 15th, the plan is to have responses posted by August 27th, and then September 4th, after the 27th, anything up until September 4th, we post till September 12th. And then again, a third is any questions up to September 25th will be posted by October 3rd of 2024. As a reminder, cdfa.ofi_Dairy Plus at cdfa.ca.gov. And subject line is 2024 Dairy Plus program question. Okay, next. Yay, last slide. Okay, so that concludes the Dairy Plus portion of the presentation for the application workshop. Any questions?
Thank you, Todd. There are no questions that I've seen in the chat. I think we were able to answer one in the Q&A box about the calculator for the AMP and Dairy Plus scenarios. But if anybody has additional questions on Dairy Plus at this time, again, please feel free to put them in the chat, the Q&A box, or click the button to raise your hand, and we'd be happy to let you to ask your question verbally. I don't think I'm seeing any at this time. We can give it another minute or two, take a breather, as we're planning to start the DDRDP portion in just a couple minutes. So again, please feel free to flag us if you have a question on Dairy Plus, or if there was something that needed additional clarification for AMP, we can consider that too if we have time. All right, we did receive one question. Can you give more details about the budget and what needs to be included in the matching funds for Dairy Plus? So Todd or Roberta, would you mind helping with that one?
Would you like to go?
Roberta, do you have any more? You're the pro on this one, but yeah. So for new AMP, just as I was saying with the new projects, is the new AMP projects do not require any matching funds. And then if we go back to the slide on Dairy Plus, for that, there it is. Yeah, maybe Roberta, can you, I guess, give a little more details on the 50-50 matchup?
Yes, definitely. So first of all, I wanted to give ask maybe a clarifying question if that is room for us to back and forth. That is two differentiating factors here. So that is the matching fund, that one would be mandatory to when applying for a previous or in progress AMP or DDRDP. So those you need to give, and we say 50-50, but it's pretty much one match up to 750K for AMP and 1 million in the case of DDRDP. And that's, so those are mandatory matches. Then that is the other situation, that you may have a new project, so you're not necessarily mandated to have match for Dairy Plus. In the case of the new projects for DDRDP, you have a match requirement, but that's a DDRDP requirement that Rosie will talk more in details once, if you're interested in going in more detail on that part. But as of this year, we have added more language about how much we expect in terms of clarity on the budgets, and maybe, and this answer will help for both if you are required to give a match or not. But that said, we are expecting, and that we notice, and actually we're open to Denise if she wants to jump at any point. USDA really, in the process of this first year of funding, and having these new projects coming or slowly coming online or starting, we noticed USDA wants a lot more information that we previously requested or asked our participants to give in terms of budget breakdowns. So that said, we understand it's very difficult to have, precise quantities, precise, descriptions of what you need in terms of in your budget, and especially on what you think is going to be a matching fund. But please try your best to as close as you can to narrow down at least, I need pipeline and I need about this much, or I'm going to give this much pipeline, or I need, let's say, cement, or I need another pump. I need, try to do the best of that you can in terms of at least singling out what extra things would be necessary for your project. Because again, USDA really put us okay, is this included? Is this going to be part of the project? Because when they approved the environmental, the CPA 52 that Todd mentioned before, they're considering all these facts, what is the federal government going to be responsible for funding and what is not? And if, even though it's not paid pipeline, are you going to disturb ground? So we need to know if that is going to be pipeline and stuff like that. So I hope this helped, but I understand you cannot do an amazing job so many months in advance, but really, really try. And yeah, Denise, please, you have the floor.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So good afternoon, everyone. So, the big deal on this is that the Dairy Plus projects have to undergo USDA's environmental evaluation. So it's more strenuous than what we go through with CDFA, and it includes specifically an evaluation for impacts to things like cultural resources. So I think Roberta really covered it pretty well. We just need the project to be really complete and really clear about which portions of it are included in the Dairy Plus versus which portions of it are included either under AMP or DDRDP. And if it's associated with the Dairy Plus, then it needs to be included both in the write-up and the budget portion, even if it's going to be funded by somebody else. You can be brief on that, but it needs to all be included so that we can account for it. So hopefully that's helpful. The first round, all of us learned a lot. And I think, there was an assumption oh, well, we're not asking for USDA dollars to pay for this. So therefore it wasn't really touched on as part of the application, which made some of that, fairly difficult in determining where we drew our boxes around and how we delineated some of those things out. And even though we knew there were certain components that had to be part of the project, right? You have to include pipelines from one portion to the other in order to move liquid manure and some pumps and, different things like that. They just weren't included to the extent that they needed to be. So hopefully that's helpful. If any of you have specific questions, please reach out. Either give me a ring or shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to chat with you about it more.
Thank you so much, Denise. That was awesome. Okay, I really hope it helped. And I don't know, now we are a little short on time, but we have an extra question. Maybe
if it's a quick one to answer, cool. Otherwise, maybe if you wouldn't mind, you can work on typing an answer to it. And then if we have time after DDRDP, we can revisit, but up to your call, because that is kind of an important area.
Okay, let me try to do this one really quick. And Denise, since you're around, I'll ask also your opinion on this. So regarding the FSA requirements, if a dairyman has multiple dairies with different dairy names, but all are set up as one dairy entity at FSA, does that mean that they can only apply at one of their dairies? Yes, you are correct, because this time we are depending on having different FSAs to fund different projects. So so in this case, exactly, we actually had cases last year that it was, you had a family that had multiple dairies, but they're all under one FSA. So unfortunately, we find out that even though we were giving multiple awards, USDA was gonna only count as one project or one. And yeah, Denise, I see you're poking there. So yeah, for this year, and hopefully maybe we can change that in the future if we have enough producers, because we need to meet some goals, and we could change this. But for this year, we will need to accept only one project per FSA. So if more farms under one FSA, we unfortunately will need to only accept one of these farms. Yeah, and Denise, if you have anything to quickly complement.
I will add just a bit, but I think you covered it perfectly. We can only select one project per FSA number. So if a producer has, let's just say 5 facilities and they're all bulked under, whatever, XXX dairy LP, then we would only be able to fund one project per FSA number. And even it gets very challenging, even if you have, let's say, they're all registered individually and have individual FSA numbers, but the ownership is common. That too is problematic with the USDA. The only difference would be, for example, if let's just say like Dairyman A put in an application all by himself under his FSA number, and perhaps he's in partnership on a separate dairy with his brother or his uncle or whatever the case may be, and they have a totally separate FSA number and the ownership over there is different, then that would be considered a separate project.
And I see Marian has extra questions, and I will confess I'm not 100% sure on how to answer those specifically right now. So I will ask if you can follow up with us, and so we can reach out to FSA and talk internally between our CDFA and CDRF team to give you a precise answer in terms of landowner, FSA farm and tract and all that. Okay.
Yeah, we'll save the questions and we can reach out. Thank you. We'll move on to our DDRDP portion now. Great.
Thank you, Denise.
Yeah, thanks, Denise.
Thank you, guys. I know this is like a lengthy workshop, but we're almost there. It's not like I'm jumping right into the DDRDP right now. So this is the last program of the day, which is DDRDP Dairy Digestive Research and Development Program. Next, please. All right. So the focus of today's DDRDP workshop will be providing information about the Dairy Digestive Research and Development Program, the current grant cycle, and the application process. So this presentation will cover the detailed information document in the request for grant application, which is also known as RGA, which is a main reference document. It's important for all the interested applicant to go read thoroughly before you start your application process. So I will talk about the DDRDP program overview, updates, and we'll go over what an application consists of in terms of different components and the sections. And we will also have a small demonstration of the DDRDP benefit calculator tool, which help estimate GHG emission reduction for the project toward the end of the presentation. Next, please. All right, so the Dairy Digestive Research and Development Program is also known as DDRDP. It is a competitive grant solicitation process, which is administered by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. The goal of the program is to award funds to California dairy operation and digester developer for the implementation of anaerobic dairy digesters, which result in the long-term significant methane emission reductions and minimize and mitigate adverse environmental impact on California dairies. So this program started in 2014, and so far we have 7 funding cycles, and DDRDP funded 138 incentive projects on California dairies. So far DDRDP awarded around $223 million with matching funds of $481 million in total. So these projects are responsible once completed and operational for the reduction of almost 2.43 million metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent to reduce per year. And another way of putting that number into context by using the EPA's equivalence calculator is approximately the same as 5,465,000 gasoline-powered passenger vehicle driven for a year. Next, please. So this is the overview of those incentive projects from the last 7 funding rounds, and we split those by the year. You can see on the left-hand side from 2015 till 2023 over the California state, and the majority of the DDRDP project, they are concentrated in the Central Valley of California, where most of the dairy industry is. But last year, one of our projects was awarded in Solano County, if you can see all the way on the right-hand side top, and which was exciting, So we hope to continue getting successful participation from a wide range of regions throughout the state. So to date, about 75% of those DDRDP funded projects are completed and operational, and we have 128 RNG and 10 electric projects, which makes a total of the 138 DDRDP funded projects through our program. Next. All right, let's focus on the current 2024 DDRDP solicitations. So funding for this round came from GGRF funds, which is also known as Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which the state allocates to various California climate investment. So to understand the sources and amount of the funding across the different these AMP and GDRDP and across the year, please feel free to read more details and explanation about the funding resources in our RGA in the introduction section. So for this fiscal year 2024-2025, we have $17 million available for both GDRDP and AMP programs. So for the next, based on the given information, approximately $8 million are available to award funds for the 2024 DDRDP round. So the maximum amount for DDRDP grant is $1.6 million, and with 50% of matching funds are required. So for example, if an applicant requests $1.6 million from CDFA, then the total project cost should equal or exceed $3.2 million. So we have increased the maximum project durations to 30 months instead of 24, just to better accommodate the project and to reduce the number of project extensions. Next, please. Or just a continuation of the grant funding and duration. So just a reminder that we are allowing the past AMP recipient to apply for DDRDP, similar to what we did last year. And past AMP dairy operation recipient who were previously funded and completed an AMP project. So AMP project either is closed out, completed, and operational. They are eligible to apply for DDRDP funding to further reduce their methane emissions. And so for these specific projects, given that AMP grant may have already covered their expenses that advance the operations readiness for the digesters, will be limited to the maximum grant amount of $1 million. So proposed project can't involve the replacement or discontinuation of the previously implemented AMP practices or equipment. So basically, any AMP dairy operation recipient is eligible to apply regardless of the past practices they implemented. But for certain practices such as composed barrel pack barn, conversion from flush to scrape, and pasture-based management, the digester must be addressing the portion of the herd which was not already covered by the previous AMP project. So in summary, the cap for the new DDRDP recipient is $1.6 million per project, but the cap for the previous AMP recipient is $1 million per project. Next, please. All right, so the current program timeline is shown in the table as well. The application period is open now from almost like 2 weeks now. An important date to note this here is the deadline for grant application, which is due on Friday, October 18, 2024 at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So application period will be followed by 3 levels of review process, and the award announcement will be made around March 2025 for DDRDP. The grant anticipated start date for the awarded project is June 1st, 2024. And these dates sometimes they are subject to change, but we keep on updating on our websites. Next, please. So each time our program they receive funding and we prepare to open a new solicitation process, we are try our best to review and improve our RGA, which is request for grant application, and associated attachment, other element on our calculator, by keeping into account the feedback we receive from our technical reviewers and some of the challenges faced by our applicants. So I would like to briefly summarize the changes to the program since the last grant rounds before we get into the review of the key program guidelines and application process. So first one is the request for grant application. The time to send the feedback letter is increased to 90 days. And the second one is the time required for permitting process has increased to 18 months. Earlier it was 6 months, which is no longer practical, and applicants just to keep in mind how lengthy the permitting process can be, and also our grant term is increased from 24 months to 30 months. And for the benefit calculator tool, which is developed by our collaborator at the California Air Resource Board, has some update to improve the calculator use for our applicant. So this year we made 3 changes into calculators. The linear generator is added as one option under the primary and secondary biogas destruction device. And the second one is an effluent pond with a centrifuge-based solid separation is added under the effluent management inputs. And the third one is the transport vehicle fuel type. We added the battery electric as one of the options. So toward the end of this presentation, I will conduct a short demo to show you what changes we made this year. And the implement process, we added some new additional applicant questions and some attachments. And just a reminder and a brief note about the related opportunity for the prospective DDRDP applicants or previously DDRDP recipient. So Daily Plus is available again this year for the second time, and eligible applicant now include who still have in progress DDRDP project, in addition to those with past completed projects. And now, as of last year, past recipients can also apply for the DDRDP funds if they want to further advance their manure management options. Next, please. All right, so here is the overview of the solicitation and the review process. So right now we are in the application periods, and it's around 90 days. For the grant application, the review process consists of 3 levels: administrative review, financial review, and technical. So after the application period, the application undergo administrative review. So administrative review is technically an internal review process to check any major issues, such as like any missing required information, or if the proposed project application is not meeting the program requirement or eligible practices. So this is called for a DQ, disqualification at this level. The next level of the review process is a financial review, and it serves to help assess the financial soundness of the organization to complete and sustain a project, especially as our grant funding is on a reimbursement basis. And the last level of review is a technical review. So academics, expert from the different university and colleague and from other state agency, they serve as a technical reviewer, and they review GHG emission reductions calculation as well as the other application section parameters. So once the project has been reviewed and have all the scores in and final funding recommendations they are made, then all applicants will be notified regarding the status of their application. So applications which are not selected for the funding are noticed, and feedback letters will be provided within 90 days. And applicants which are selected for an award are also will be notified, and the CDFA will initiate the grant agreement process. So the grant agreement package will include specific instructions and award requirements. So these grant agreement process can take 3 to 6 months. So once the grant agreement is executed, then the project implementation can begin. Next, please. All right, so now we will focus on the eligibility and exclusions section of the DDRDP application. So these are the important information the potential applicant should be aware of, and please refer to request for grant applications on our web pages, but that's like there's a lot of information out there before you start working on your application. So the project site must be located in commercial California dairy operations. A dairy operation is defined as an entity that operates a dairy herd which produces milk and cream commercially, and whose bulk milk and cream is received or handled by any distributor, manufacturers, or any nonprofit cooperative association of dairy producers. Multiple applications are allowed, but each application should have its own digester at a unique site. We are still sticking to the same, that the new submitting organization are still eligible for additional 5 points. So any defect digester that was constructed in the past and have become entirely non-functional or never been functional since their construction due to some technical or regulatory issues of minimum of 12 months, they are eligible for this program. So once the project has been awarded with the DDRDP fund, the project can't change or alter their biogas and use during the project term. They can't change or alter the herd size, no expansion of the herd size beyond the limit of existing permit at the time of the application. And they can't change their ownership or partnership entity of the dairy. Next, please. For the exclusion, for the continuation of the previous slide, so DDRDP funds can be used for upgrading existing functional dairy digester just to boost the GHG emission reductions and energy productions, and switching from existing manure management practices to another to increase the baseline GHG emission, which is excluded from the DDRDP funds. And dairy operations who previously received a DDRDP grant and successfully completed a project, and a previously DDRDP recipient with incomplete, expired, and failed project may not reapply for 3 years after the time of project was closed out. And biogas conditioning and cleanup costs are allowable under the 2024 DDRDP grant. Next, please. So in the next 2 slides, I'm going to talk about a brief summary of the program requirement. But for again, another reminder for the details, you can always go to our RGA request for grant applications. So methane is used for energy or transportation fuel productions, and the flaring as a sole biogas end use is not eligible for the grant. So at least 80% of the food feedstock dry weight for the anaerobic digestion must come from the dairy manure, and 20% of dry weight can account for other substrates such as dairy processing waste, including whey or other agricultural waste. So make sure to use the commercial available technology with proven operational history for capturing methane. So stick to allowable and unallowable cost guidance, and you can refer to RGA for more detail on that. Next, please. All right, so in continuation to the program requirement, we make sure to improve and maximize the water quality by ensuring the double line lagoon with the tier 1 specification or above ground tanks or below ground tanks, which are constructed of either concrete or suitable impermeable and corrosive resistance materials. So for electricity project, we keep in mind the air quality. There's a limit of NOx emission. Project may propose to include the Newton management technology in conjunction with the methane reduction technology. However, the implementation of the standalone Newton management technology to an existing digester is not eligible under different programs. So quarterly reports and the post-project final reporting are requirements for this program. Next, please. All right, so Alyssa already did the demo on Amplify. I'm just going to go through. I'm not going to go do the demo for DDRDP. It's basically the same, structure is the same as AMP. The application section is different, so I'm just going to walk you through some slides. So applicant will be required to complete and submit their application through an online portal, which is also called as Amplify. So the application portal link is available on the DDRDP webpage. If you go to the webpage, you can see the link, and after navigating to the opportunity page, the screenshot on the left-hand side will appear on your screen. As soon as you apply this click button, you can log in, and screen on your right-hand side will pop up. You can create your account, your password, and you can start, start your application work. And please refer to AMP user guide if needed, and you can also find the link for this guide in our RGs. So application section for DDRDP, there's like required fields to fill to upload the attachment. You can always save your draft in progress and return and come back. And once you are completely sure, like you have everything is in, you uploaded everything, you can go ahead and submit your application. When submitted successfully, you will expect an email from applicant's system. So once the application is gone, you can't go back and make any change. I mean, you can go and download the application and see what did you do, but there's no way to change at that time. Just want to emphasize that the basic structures and the functions, they are same as an AMP, as Lisa already explained really well in the AMP section of the presentation. Okay, and next, please. All right. So an online application basically made up of, again, the two main pages. The one application is for DDRDP and the other one is for J+. So if you see on the top this rectangle thing, you can have, so you can see the four different circles. This is opportunity details, project informations, application form, and submit. So this is the project information. This is the basic information page, which is built into every Amplify application. So we can't able to like add it or delete this one. This is like a small basic information. You can fill this form and move to the next step. And this just asks for your name and award money and primary contact information and everything. So within the application form, which you can see a third circle in this rectangle, is a main DDRDP program application. This is very much similar to the past rounds. The DDRDP has 6 main sections to complete, which involve some questions within the application itself, as well as some places to upload the questions. And these attachments, they are both required, if applicable, or optional attachments. So some of these have the templates and some changes. This year, we made some changes to the questions, in terms of for more clarity, as well as in terms of supporting materials, just a small minor changes. Templates links are provided in the Amplify itself. And we, as Lisa already mentioned, we advise you to open the link into the new tab. Somehow this year, like I think it automatically open to the new tab, but just to make sure, so you can stay on your main application page. So that way you can still stay on your main application page you're working on. So links to these templates can be found in the RGA on our DDRDP website, as well as on the online application form itself. Again, RGA frequently asked questions, application sections, and DDRDP questionnaire preview are great references that can help you navigate and complete your application process successfully and smoothly. All right. Next, please. Yeah, so we still decided to stick this slide this time as well. Last year we got this question in our DDRDP inbox about the multiple application by single entity question. So an entity can create an account with one email address associated with an entity and can submit the multiple application under one entity account. If you can see on the right-hand side screenshot, as one application is already submitted, and then there's a pop-up, green pop-up, like you can start new application. This means like you have one email ID, you can submit more than one application. I just want to, I just want to point out that please don't wait until the very last minute. You never know this technology and how these things work. Make sure you finish your application, everything like before time. And and you can always download your copy. But once you submit your application, you can make further changes. And once I think we can move on to the next one. All right. So these are the different category you will find in the DDRDP online form or questionnaire in the Amplify. So this information used by the CDFA to track and sort the project. For example, we have basic information about the applicant information, additional information about the project, as I already talked. And the important category here is to mention is the application category. So are you guys interested in DDRDP or JD Plus or both? And so you can choose and pick in this category. And then if I picked DDRDP, I want to go for the DDRDP application. So there's 5 different application section will pop up, So, and we can talk more into the coming slides. And then the last one is evaluation of benefit to the priority population. So these are all the sections related to the DDRDP application. All right, next, please. All right, so section 1, the first section is digester project plan and long-term viability. So this section has attachment number 1, which is project narrative template, which is the required attachment. And this you can explain in here the details of the history and background of the daily operations, the type of digester to be used in the proposals, the plans for renewable powers or low carbon fuels, site control, sustainability of the project, operation, maintenance, so organization of the project team and experience, like as much information you want to provide, you can provide over here. So this attachment 1 coexists with the supporting material 1.1, 1.2, and 1.4. So 1.1 and 1.2, they are the required attachments, which includes the site plan as well as a resume of the team. Commitment letter, supporting material 1.3 and 1.4, they are, if applicable. So they are not required, but we strongly encourage to provide those information if you guys can. So we added this 1.4 attachment this year, supporting material this year for centralized project. So we would like to have the letter of commitment from different participating operations. So the attachment number 2 in this section is work plan. The work plan template is required. This must clearly and concisely describe the task and activity required to accomplish goals and objectives in the proposed project narrative. It must identify the measurable task and timeline and include an evaluation component to measure the success of the project and determine whether the project objectives were accomplished. Next, please. All right, the section number 2 is project budget and financial. So project budget include attachment number 3, which is the budget worksheet template. So applicant must provide a clear accounting of cost, work hour, equipment associated, and the bids with all activity necessary to complete the project. So applicant must identify the 2024 DDRDP funds requested and the source and amount of matching funds. Matching fund in cash, in kind, contribution, state and federal funds, and any other funding sources necessary to complete the project. So this is a required attachment. So this attachment coexists with supporting material 3.1, which is if applicable, but we still strongly encourage you guys to submit this one. So attachment number 4 is financial, which is a required attachment, but we don't have any template for this attachment because there's multiple documents that you can submit to complete this requirement. This will be kept confidential. Only CDFA will have access to this one, and it will be only used for the financial review portion of the project. And I just want to say this: project partner must not have filed for bankruptcy in the past 5 years. Applicant won't be able to consider for award in this case. Next, please. All right, the section number 3 is estimated GHG emission reductions. So it has attachment number 5, which is a DDRDP benefit calculator tool, which is required as a logged Excel file. Coexists with 5.1 supporting material explanation of the exemption for GHG calculation, which is if applicable. So, but we strongly encourage to attach this one. In this attachment, you need to give an explanation about the assumption made to the calculator. For example, her size, electricity, diesel consumptions, the model or type of the vehicle. So I will, as I said earlier, I will conduct a little demo. I hope we still have time for that, so just go with the calculator for you guys. Section number 4 is project readiness and permitting status. So this is attachment number 6 is the required template. And this coexists with the 2 supporting document attachments 6.1 and 6.2, which are if applicable. So potential permit may include the permit from any, building permit from the county or authorization to construct from the Air District Board. So supporting documents such as the permit application, already issued permit for the project or existing permit to operate, or communication with the agency. If any information, it will be nice to have those information in the application. So for the supporting material 6.2, this would include an agreement for the purchase of the biomethane produced or its byproducts, for example, electricity, fuel or hydrogen. Next, please. All right, section 5 includes the environment performance. attachment should describe the proposal's impact on the criteria pollutants such as NOx, toxic air contaminants, some other air pollutants, and provide an explanation of additional benefit. For example, water conservation, water storage, groundwater safety, efficient water usage, like a real-time irrigation system, or value-added projects, reduction of the odor, etc., and how they're affecting the community. And also the applicant need to discuss if the project is going to result on any impact to the environment or local community. And if yes, then they have to come up with a plan how they can reduce those, strategy to reduce those issues in the community. So this attachment has a 7.1 supporting material, which provide the documentations, including but not limited to an explanations and citation from published literature to support the project environment performance claim. And then section number 6 is the community impact template, which is attachment. We changed the numbering this year because last year we had a little confusion during the review process. Now we have attachment number 8A, 8B, 8C, and 8D. And all of these attachments, they are required in this section. All right, so 8A should describe how the proposal will create economic benefit to the community. And this is a template, you can fill that out. And 8B is like what California Air Resource Board Community Engagement Questionnaire, which you can fill. It's a fillable form. You can fill this up and upload in the application. And 8C is a place where you can provide the 3 letters of support from community members, local government, community organization, demonstrating that outreach was conducted. Where 1 letter should come directly from the local community, for example, local nonprofit association or local community activist or residents of that area. And supporting material 8.D provide the documentation to justify the responses to the priority population benefit questions. So these are the 6 main sections of the DDRDP application. Next, please. So we just wanted to emphasize the community outreach requirement here. Community outreach is a very crucial part of the DDRDP application process. Community outreach efforts must have occurred a maximum of 12 months prior to the application submission deadlines. So community outreach effort must occur within the local community or the county where the project is proposed, where the project is going to be. So we encourage the applicant to discuss any negative environmental impact and explain the mitigation measure that will be implicated for that specific project. So in-person community meetings are required, and additional metrics should be provided if outreach happens through like social media, for example, Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. And comprehension record of the meeting held for an individual project or should be held for an individual project or for specific project in cluster should be provided. So you can provide the more information as well, like the method of the notification, dates, time of the meeting, locations, attendance, reports, and like any child care and food provided, etc. So a link for accessing these meeting recording can be provided in the community impact template, which was I already talked in the previous slide, attachment number 8. You can provide the link for the meeting so we can see the meeting is being conducted. So this is not new this year. We did this last year, and I think it worked well for all of our applicants. Okay, so scoring, next one. Yeah, thank you. So here is the scoring criteria that will be used to evaluate all the submitted application. This is pretty much similar to what we have last year. So DDRDP application, they are once submitted, are evaluated as described earlier, and they go through 3 different levels of the review process. And this is basically the breakdown of application section. You can see section on the left-hand side, the next point, and how each categories are scored. So details on the criteria considered within each of these scoring sections can be found in the RGA and Appendix E, as you can see the screenshot on the right-hand side. As you can see, we are still providing 5 extra points to those submitting organizations that have not been awarded with the DDRDP before, and we hope with that to incentivize the application of new submitting organizations to our program. All right, so that was the, thank you. So that was the bulk of the application slides. Now I think we still have time. Yeah, I can slow down a little bit. So now we are moving to the final portion of our presentation by having a close look at the calculators. So between the last funding grant round and this one, we made some changes to the DDRDP calculators. So we work with our California Air Resource team to address the gap we noticed from the last year and what few questions technical reviewers have. So this year, as I mentioned earlier, we added linear generator, effluent pond, the centrifuge-based soil separations as a part of the post-digestion technology, and we added the battery electric fuel transportation vehicle, one option for the transportation vehicle. So so calculators are one of the main component of the DDRDP applications that you see on the left-hand side. So California Air Resource Board, they developed this calculator to estimate the, GHG emission reductions and also the benefits specific for the project under the DDRDP programs. They look at the baseline of the project and they compare with the project scenario. For example, we have like linear generator, how the comparison with that, and the calculator, how that will result in the avoidable means and emission reduction from the anaerobic digestions. As you can see, there's a link. Lisa, can I share my screen now? Okay.
Yeah, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, great. Just a second. Can you see my screen now?
I can't yet. Give it a second.
Me neither. Yeah.
Okay, just a second. Okay, now I think so, right?
There we go. Yeah. Mhm.
Great. Yeah. All right, so this is the calculator. I mean, I know Lisa and Roberta, they did already like really great job on like explaining how everything go here. Just a second. All right. So yeah, I'm gonna go through each tab like quickly, we still have some time. So first
Hey,
of all,
Rosie.
yeah.
I'm seeing the PowerPoint slide. You might need to drag in your calculator instead.
Can you see his calculator now?
User guide on the browser.
Okay, you can see. Okay. All right, let me go this.
There you go. There it is.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And the screens that keep on moving from here and there. All right, so calculator. So this is the DDRDP calculator. You can see over here in the first tab, which is read me, and we have user guide. You can always like click on this link and user guide will be open. I can show you really quick here. This is the user guide, and you can go to this website as Robert and Lisa already showed you guys. Go to this website, go downtown, and you can see your DDRDP calculator right here. You can download that one, and this will be open as an Excel file. You can save that one and start working on that. So here you can have, if you have any question regarding the calculator, you can go send an email to folks in the email provided right here. And then there's a key for the color coded fields. So some of the fields, they are required. The green one is required, blue one is optional, and there's other options like black if it's not applicable, etc. So that's like a basic first tab. And then we go to the second tab, which is called definitions. So basically, this tab has a list of like definition which can be helpful by filling up the tool. For example, if you don't know what's like solid storage or dry log, you can always come back and refer and then use that information to fill up the calculated price. On the next tab is project information. So this is a basic, very explanatory tab. You can just fill in your project name, application ID. I'm using the example from this user guide. You can put like your DDRDP farms, matching fund, everything. And if you can note, like if you notice that every page have the guide, user guide links, you can always open the link, get get the information which can help you to fill that calculator. And the next step is project data input. So this is the bulk of the calculator lies in this tab, basically project information tab and the project data input. So most of these options here in this tab of the calculator, they have drop-down options. As I said, like greens are required, blues are optional. So I already have this example up here for you guys. So for example, I'm going to show you what changes we have into DDRDP calculator this year. So if you go to like, for this example, I'm going to go for covered lagoon. So we have a drop-down options of covered lagoon, complete mix and other options. So I'm going for the covered lagoons with the 90% of biogas being destroyed over, in primary destruction device. And then for the primary destruction, so right here you can see the different options. I'm going with upgrade to CNG fuel. But you can see over here below the fuel cell, we added the linear generator options for you guys. So this is a new addition this time. So you can always, like, it depends on which option works best for you, best applicable for your application. You know, some of these areas will go black and why not? For example, yeah, and then for this one, I'm choosing secondary biogas extraction as a lean burn. You can always choose any of these options that works for you. Or I'm not using any electricity stuff. I'm not doing any transportation. But for transportation, if you are doing like raw biogas is trapped within the dairy cluster, you can put your mileage here, enter the numbers, and you can use the transport vehicle type. And this year we have option of, we added the new option of battery electric options this time. And then again, you can add the more information that depends on your project. If the fuel will be trucked to an offsite, again, you can add your mileage right here and your transport vehicle type. And then it comes to the solid separation inputs. You know, baseline, I'm not doing any solid separation for the project. I'm doing a stationary screen. There's different options for you guys here. And this one, again, what I already talked about this one, the new addition we have this time, how, in terms of the option, you know, so we added this new option. Yeah, this one, effluent found with the centrifuge-based solid separation. So there could be the different options. You can, you know, then basically you can put the information which works best for your project. And next one is the project location inputs. This basic information about your county and your milk fat, protein, and milk produced per cow per day. And now this is, okay. So this is the baseline manure management, you know, proceeding average of the stuff proceeding 12 months before the project. So you can add your livestock number right here, depends on what you have, like heifers and dry cows and dairy cows, and then some of these options in the column 8A, 8B, and 8C, they pop up looking automatically. And then you can add your electrical uses, your vehicle type. That's what we added last year, type of your vehicle, fuel type, model year, everything right here. And then the next section is your project manure management. You know, so after the installation of your biogas control system. So some of these automatic options, like for example, livestock, all these stuff, they automatically copy from your baseline stuff right here. So you don't have to do that. But you can always add on like your consumption of electricity you use after the project is installed and what kind of vehicle you use to, which is associated with your manure management options on your dairy farms and on project site. So once you run everything, once you are happy, you know what you have, you put all the information in and calculator is going to do this work. So for next step is a boiler worksheet. So if you have that option, you can use that, otherwise you can just skip this tab. And this is our output. So once we have all the data in the project data input tab, you can see a summary of your, this is your project information we added in the beginning, and this is your summary of your GHG as a different GHG reductions for total funds and energy collected, etc. And the next step is the benefit summary. You can set the benefit of your, ROG, NOx, everything. And if your project, if you have compost producing pollen, you will get captured here in the last tab is like a soil that go benefit. So this tab for the technical review, this is technically tab is like for the reviewer, so please don't use this one for you. And I think, yeah, that's it for the calculator. Can I go back to my screen? Let me stop sharing. Okay, that's good. Thanks, Elisa. Yeah, so as we already mentioned, like here, you can go click and go to your calculator, you fill your calculator. It's very like, you go to the definitions, click on the different tabs and see what you have. And if you have any questions, you can send an email to our folks in AAB64. All right, so next one. All right, we're almost there. So CDFA posted a frequently asked questions document on the web page, and we will add 3 separate rounds of questions received and responses during the current application period. For example, if we receive the application on August 15, they will be posted on the web page with answers of 20 seconds. And that's how we have 3 different sets of questions received, and they are applicable to all 3 different programs. They will be posted on the respective programs' websites. And Yeah, we encourage you to, when you send these questions to, like, if you have a question for the DDRDP, when we send to the DDRDP inbox, send it to DDRDP inbox with the subject line of like DDRDP 24 or something. I think I missed to add over here. Yeah, and next one. All right, so yeah, let's end this workshop on a happy note. This is the 10th birthday of DDRDP, and we are so proud of our recipients. Farmers, dairy farmers, our team, dairy developers, and supporters for making this initiative so successful, and many more years to come. And thank you for all your support and love for our program. And I think with this, yeah, I'm going to say thank you for joining us. And I think, I don't know, Elisa, do we have time for questions?
We have a few minutes for questions, actually. So
Oh my God,
there
I
aren't.
touched too much.
No, you did good. There aren't any in the Q&A right now or the chat, but just a reminder to any of our attendees, please feel free to write in the chat, enter a question in the Q&A, or raise your hand if you'd like to be able to ask a question. We have a few minutes before we close out, so yeah, feel free to chime in if you'd like. We'll do a little bit of wrap up in case we don't end up having questions. Just wanted to, from all of us, say thank you so much for joining and participating in today's webinar. Again, we will have another one next week. You're welcome to join. You are also more than welcome to email us if you have questions that do come up afterwards, and we will be happy to get back to you. So thank you so much, everybody. Feel free to drop off if you'd like. We will hang around for another couple minutes before closing the webinar out.